started. And I'm getting a couple questions from you guys, so I want to address just a few things. How many of you guys have been doing quizzes at the end of the unit in the textbook as we go along? I mean, we haven't finished unit 3 yet. How many of you guys have been working through Learn, Test, Pass? Are you guys getting into kind of sort of, you guys started getting into a groove? I mean, guys, week 1 is the easy week, right? After week 1, we'll get through this week. We start math this week. We start getting into heavier stuff. Next week, we get into even heavier stuff. So we just kind of go from here. So I hope you're caught up. I hope you know, looking ahead. I say your homework for every class is to review where we've been and look ahead at where we're going. I think one thing, if you haven't realized it yet, we do just keep moving. I mean, I got a lot of information to cover and we're already down 1 week. The quizzes in the textbook at the end of each unit, I tend to think of those quizzes as like the 101. They tend to be a little bit easier than Learn, Test, Pass. So, the suggestion is that you kind of start with the quiz at the end of the textbook and build yourself up. If you can pass the end of the quiz at the end of the unit in the book, then you go on to Learn, Test, Pass, because those questions tend to be harder. I have heard from former students that your exam questions are more reflective of what you see in Learn, Test, Pass. So please don't ignore Learn, Test, Pass. That's preparing you. The textbook is building you up to it. Learn, Test, Pass is preparing you for your exam. Guys, when you guys pass your state exam, Lane and I always, of course, celebrate with you, because as we should. But Lane and I almost always ask, what did you do? How did you, what did you do to prepare yourself? What did you do to pass a state exam? And overwhelmingly, we always hear 2 answers. People that get their license, that pass their state exam, always say, I studied my butt off and I did everything in Learn, Test, Pass. So Learn, Test, Pass is not a requirement. You don't have to do anything in it. The only thing you have to do is meet the attendance requirements and pass my end of class exam. How do you pass my end of class exam? You go through the textbook, you go through Learn, Test, Pass. So that's what these things are here to help you guys. In just a second, I forgot last week to show you guys how you can grade yourselves. So we'll do that in just 1 second. I did a little, I don't know if you guys saw the video in our YouTube channel. I did like a little 3.5-minute video in case you didn't want to wait until today. But so I do apologize for that, but we'll do that in just a second. But it's really important that you're grading yourself as you go, so you can gauge yourself. And like I said, if you fail the quiz at the end of unit 3 in the textbook, then you need to go back and redo unit 3. You guys with me? You gotta know your strengths and your weaknesses. There should be no surprises on test day. Don't forget the homework assignment. I've heard from most of you, so thank you for those of you that have texted or emailed me. If you haven't sent me your introduction yet, please remember to do that. If you did and I didn't respond, then I didn't get it. So I will always respond. So if you're still waiting on me to respond, then I didn't get it. So just resend it. And the other thing I just want to talk to you guys about real quick before we get into it. Technology is great when it works, right? Sometimes technology doesn't work. So part of the problem with being on Zoom is we're all on different internet providers, internet connections. We're all on a different device. I don't know what you're on, but I can almost promise it's not what I'm on. So glitches happen, things happen. We'll just work through them if things happen. Rest assured, if I lose power for whatever reason, I have a battery backup that I'm plugged into. So if I lose power, that should kick in. If I lose internet, I got my phone right here. I'm prepared to jump on my mobile hotspot. One thing I've learned is that if for some reason I lose power or internet, I disappear, but you guys don't. So if I just disappear at a moment's notice or second notice, just hang tight and I'll get back to you guys just as soon as I can. If my battery backup doesn't work and my mobile hotspot doesn't work, then we're kind of out of luck, and we'll just make up the time. We'll just have to figure it out as we go. But hopefully it won't happen, but you never know. I think we got chance of winter participation coming again this weekend. So we're just in that time of year where, you know, anything could happen. So just hang tight and know that we will get through it. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have all the answers, but what I do know is we will get through it. So what I want to do, again, I promised you guys, and this will actually, maybe this has happened for a good reason. This will kind of actually serve as a good refresher for the T-bar, because we're getting ready. We're not too far away from getting into our math at the end of Unit 3. So we're actually going to use the T-bar in play. And I want to show you guys a quick, easy way that you can grade yourself. Again, gauging yourself as you go. So you know where you are. So you know how you're doing. And the good news is we can do this using the T-bar. So if I draw out my T-bar, remember what we said, the rate or the percent always goes in the bottom right. So in this case, the rate or the percent is your score. What's the percentage that you made on this practice test? The number that goes on top is the number you got right. And the number on the bottom is the total number of questions of that quiz. So let's say, for example, here's your formula. Let's say, for example, you take the quiz, and it's just because I'm here. You take the quiz at the end of Unit 2. Okay, so you do the quiz at the end of Unit 2. What you're solving for is your score. What you want to know is what you made, right? So you know if you pass that quiz or not. So your X is your score. That's what you're solving for. The end of Unit 2, there are 25 questions. Let's say you take this quiz and you get 18 right. Remember, our back fourth line means divide. So when you take 18 divided by 25, you get a score of 0.72, which shakes out to, 72%. If the minimum is a 75%, did you just pass the end of Unit 2 exam? No, you only made a 72%. So if you can't pass the end of Unit 2 exam, of course, my question to you is, how are you going to do the end of class exam? How are you going to do the state exam? So if I were you, I would go back through Unit 2. I would study Unit 2 because clearly you need a couple more questions to bring that up over 75. Understand too, 75 is the bare minimum. If I were you guys, when you're taking practice quizzes, I would shoot for 80%. Give yourself some wiggle room. That's just me. All you have to do is 75%. Everybody hear me? All you have to do is 75. But to prepare you for that, I would strive to make an 80% or higher. Questions or comments on that? You just take the number you got right divided by the total number of questions on that quiz, and that gives you your score. If it's not a 75, how are you going to pass the end of class exam? And this is why I say, if you're gauging yourself, if you're grading yourself as we go, there should be no surprises on test day. Questions or comments? Remember, you got the class recordings. You can go back and watch the recording again. You got PowerPoints, you got Learn Test Pass, you got your textbook. We give you lots of resources to help you guys succeed. If anybody ever told you this stuff was easy, they lied to you. Yes, ma'am.
Where are we taking the test at?
What do you mean? Our class?
Yes, it's online.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
Is it a designated place that we have to go to?
No, it's online. So you just log into Zoom.
Okay, and I have another question.
There's a tutorial. Okay, so there's a tutorial. Hang on your that email that Lane sent. Let me erase that. If if you're just, and we'll talk, guys, we'll talk all about your end of class exam as we get closer, but if you want to know more about it now, there should be, well, I thought there was. I got a tutorial for class marker. So we'll get, here it is, class marker. So if you want to know what your end of class exam is going to look like, it's on a program called Class Marker. And here's a tutorial of what class marker looks like. And again, I'll talk all about it when we get closer, but you can sneak peek, preview that. This is just the email that Lane sent. And what was your other question?
Second. My other question was, like, you hear, when you're in a class, you hear a lot of talk, but you don't know what to actually take for true. So another question that was circulating is, do we sign up to be part of a brokerage can we get a mentor, or do we have to be somewhere for a certain year to actually, how does this work?
So we'll talk all about that, but just kind of big picture now that we're here. When you're ready, you'll affiliate with a firm. All firms are different. Some offer different training, some offer a mentorship and apprenticeship. My suggestion to you is you talk to 2, if not 3 firms to find out which one is the best fit for you. So kind of shop around and see where you want to go. We'll talk. You guys are coming in as independent contractors, not employees. And we'll talk all about the difference of that, the distinction of that when we get to Unit 7. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, it's your choice because you're an independent contractor. So technically you work for you, right? You are your own boss. So if you choose to affiliate with a firm, then you'll have, the tools and the broker in charge and the training or whatever else they offer. Again, hear me when I say all firms are different. There is no one flat across the board. Firms can pretty much do whatever they want to do as long as it's within, license law and commission rule. Okay. Somebody asked about your state exam. Is it online as well? With your state exam, you have a choice. You can either take it online or in person. Again, I'll talk more about that. Guys, remember too, when you're taking these exams at the end of the book and Learn, Test, Pass, work with a clock, work with a timer. I think if you set 2 minutes per question, because I hear that a lot, either you guys blow through it as fast as you possibly can and leave time on the table, or you don't give yourself enough time. Both your exams, my exam and the state exam, are timed. So start now. This is what we're trying to do, is prepare you guys for these tests. This is why I'm encouraging you guys to start now. Start practicing now. Good. Somebody worked with a clock this weekend. Just set the timer on your phone. However many questions times 2. Set the timer on your phone. If you blow through it in 15 minutes and you failed it, my guess is you failed it because you went through it too fast and you left a lot of time on the table. I see it on test day. You guys log out after an hour. You left 2.5 hours on the table. So you can help gauge yourself there. One last thing now that I think, if you came on late after attendance, please make sure you tell me good morning so I can count you here. And guys, with that being said, if for some reason you ever miss a screenshot for attendance from break, please tell me when you're back. If I don't know you're here, I can't give you credit for being here for that hour. So if for some reason you missed the screenshot for attendance and you come back late from break, just say, Julie, I'm back, or here, or something, so I can make sure I give you credit. Question came in of the difference in the state and the national. We talked about this last week. So the national is kind of the big picture, the big overview. The national section is material that every state in the country follows. The state section are things that are specific to North Carolina. So we break it up into 2 sections, things that everybody across the country has to learn and things that are just specific to North Carolina. Okay. Question came in: after you take the class exam, how quickly will you know if you passed or failed? Oh, immediately. You hit submit. It says, are you sure? You say yes, and boom, pass or fail. Take a breath before you hit submit because it is that fast. How about that? Isn't technology great? Again, we'll talk all about the exams It's way too early to talk about your exams. Don't put your cart in front of your horse. I got a whole bunch of other stuff to talk about before we talk about your exams. Thank you, Alexandra, for sharing that. She went through the unit and then index cards around key terms and terms. Yeah, that's why I think index cards are helpful. The areas that you're struggling with. If you missed a quiz question because you didn't know what that word meant or that term meant, that's a good candidate for a flashcard, right? If you're having a hard time grasping a concept. And as I said on the first day, I think it means more to you guys when you make your own flashcards as opposed to buying them. Because when you make your own flashcards, one, they're tailored, they're customized to you, but two, you're writing it down. And just sometimes the repetition of writing it will make it stick. So can you buy flashcards? Yeah. Can you find an app? Sure. I think it means more if you guys create your own. Okay. Anything else before we get started? Is that Stephanie? Is that yes, you have a question? Or yes, you're ready to get started? We talked about Travis Everett last week. He has his pre-licensing class on YouTube. Oh, Stephanie says Travis is old. You may have to search for current Travis. He's been doing this for a long time, so he's got videos up from, so you may just have to search around a little bit. That's a great point though, Stephanie. Thank you for bringing that up. Make sure you're studying North Carolina state law and current, right? Laws and rules change. It just happens. The only thing consistent in this industry is change. So is it easy to go to Google and find old, outdated information out there? Yeah. So just be really careful you're studying the current. Thank you, Stephanie, for bringing that up. Dates. Yep, that's how you can tell. Look at the dates of the videos. When in doubt, let your book, let your syllabus tell you. If you're not sure, is this current, is this old? Let your book and your syllabus guide you. Okay, so we are in Unit 3, and we're almost ready to talk about the math, but just as a quick refresher, remember, everything in Unit 3, except for one thing, is an encumbrance. So an encumbrance, we said, is just anything that affects title. Encumbrances aren't necessarily good or bad. Don't get that in your mind. They're not good, they're not bad, they're just something that affects the property. And the first encumbrance we talked about were liens. In one word, tell me in the chat, when you see the word lien, what do you see? When you see the word lien, what do you see? And a couple of you need to tilt your cameras. I can't see you. Yeah, so when you see the word lien, see the word loan. If you have a lien on your property, it's because you owe somebody some money. Somebody put a lien on the property to get their money. And when are they going to get their money? They'll get their money when you convey, when you sell the property to somebody else. Later this week, we'll get into Unit 5. Unit 5 is our attorney's unit. Unit 5 is all about title and deed and recordation and why we record and all this other stuff. But one of the reasons that we record is so anybody getting ready to purchase the property can have their attorney search the title and search the public records and make sure that the current owner is going to clear up any liens before they convey the property. Because remember, we talked about two different types of liens. There's specific liens and there's general liens. Specific liens attached to the property, which means if it's not cleared up before the property is conveyed, then it continues on with the property and the new owner is stuck with it. So lien is a loan. If you have a lien on the property, you owe somebody some money. Another encumbrance that we talked about were easements. Easements is just permission to be there. It's not ownership is no way ownership. An easement on the property says you have permission to use somebody's property. Maybe it's a pertinent easement that affects 2 tracts of land. Maybe it's an easement in gross that could affect 1 tract of land. It could affect thousands of tracts of lands. Guys, I don't know a single property that doesn't have some kind of easement on it. May that be a utility easement, for example. If you like power and you like water, you probably have an easement on your property so that the power company and the water company can run their equipment through your property. And then where we ended was talking about an encroachment. Encroachments are bad. That is an encumbrance that is bad no matter how you look at it. If you have an encroachment, your improvement extends onto your neighbor's property. I think one of the more common encroachments that we see is the fence. The only thing you know by looking at a fence is that somebody put a fence there. That's correct. I don't have a PowerPoint up yet. We're just talking. The only thing you see by looking at a fence is that somebody put a fence there. You don't know they had it surveyed before they put the fence up. You don't know that they put the fence up on their boundaries. Maybe they put it within their boundaries or outside of their boundaries. The only thing you know by looking at a fence or a shed in the corner of the yard is that somebody put it there. When we get into Unit 5, we'll even talk about maybe the HOA doesn't allow fences. So if you're showing property and the buyer says, can I have a fence? Oh, I see that guy over there has a fence, so I know I'm allowed to have a fence. No, the only thing you know by looking at a fence is that somebody put a fence there. How do we know if a fence is allowed? We check the restrictive covenants. We check the rules that govern that HOA. And again, we'll talk about that in Unit 5. So where we are now, another lien that we're talking about are our taxes. And we're going to get into this, and then this is eventually going to lead us into our math that we're going to see for that we're going to do in this unit. Every property in the state of North Carolina is subject to taxation. And in North Carolina, how we do taxation, we use something called ad valorem property taxes. And ad valorem just means of market value. Market value for tax purposes is different than market value for appraisal purposes. It's a different process. It's a different system. So ad valorem is market value for tax purposes. And the tax rate in North Carolina is just expressed as a tax rate per 100. Sometimes when you see the word per, not all the times, but sometimes when you see the word per, it's just a fancy word for divide. So how would I find the rate? Well, let's say that my tax rate is 73 cents per $100. So how would I find the rate? I just take 0.73, divide it by 100, and I get a rate of 0.0073. We'll see in just a minute that 0.0073 is what I can use in my T-bar to find my taxes. So for right now, we're just talking about it. We're just explaining it. The tax rate helps us determine, the tax rate and the market value help us determine how much your annual taxes are. And again, that's the math we're going to do in just one second. So in North Carolina, we have something called the North Carolina Machinery Act. Cities and counties and municipalities are free to set their taxes however they want to. But the Machinery Act kind of puts a ceiling. It regulates how the cities and the counties and the municipalities do their taxes. So they regulate standards for real property taxation, for assessments. How do we assess property? For the tax appraisal process, how does the appraiser determine the market value for tax purposes? And there's tax exempt properties in North Carolina too. So for example, not-for-profit organizations may have tax exemptions, religious, education, Senior. Some seniors may qualify for a tax exempt. They still pay taxes. They just may not be required to pay as much. So the Machinery Act puts a ceiling on the cities and municipalities. So when we're talking about the assessment, how do we determine what taxes are assessed at? Again, to determine tax value, the process is different than determining appraisal value to originate a loan. We'll talk about the appraisal. I got a whole unit dedicated to the appraisal. That's unit 17. So we will get there. North Carolina, our assessed value is 100% of market value. So whatever we determine the market value is, that's our assessed value. In other states, the assessed value may be less than market value. They may say something like 80% of market value. We'll do examples of that in just a minute when we do the math. This is what I want you guys to understand. Whether you do 100% of market value or, for example, 80% of market value, you do what the question tells you to do. Always do what the question tells you. If it tells you that market value is 80% of assessed value, then that's what you do. Don't argue with the question and say, no, I'm standing in North Carolina. Just do what the question tells you. So either you will use market value, which is 100%, which is the assessed value, or you may use a percentage of the market value. Again, just do what the problem tells you. So if North Carolina uses ad valorem, the tax rate per 100, other states, a good candidate for your national section, may use something called a mill rate. And a mill rate is just 1/1000. So ad valorem is the tax rate per 100. The mill rate is 1/1000. So if the problem gives you 15 mills, you just take 15 divided by 1,000, and your tax rate is 0.015. What's the opposite of divide? Multiply. So what if the problem gives you a rate of 0.015 and asks you how many mills it is? You would take 0.015 and multiply by 1,000 to get 15 mills. 15 mills, 0.015 tax rate. Ad valorem's per 100. Mill is 1/1000. Do what the problem tells you. You're never going to have a problem that gives you ad valorem and mills. Okay. I mean, they're mean, but they're not cruel, right? So it's always going to be one or the other, but they may not tell you that it's 1/1000. So that's why we need to know that a mill is 1/1000. There you go. So just to compare and contrast, again, North Carolina, we use a tax rate per 100. We use 100% of the assessed value. In other states, for your national section, you may see a problem with a mill, 1/1000. The assessed value may be less. Obviously, the problem has to tell you 80% of market value, for example, is your assessed value. Let's bring it back home to North Carolina and let's look at our taxation timetable. If you guys will turn with me to page 64 in your book, this very thing that you're looking at is on page 64. So you don't need to write this down. And on page 64, we have our taxation timetable. I want you guys to do a favor, do me a favor. You see on the arrow, the left-hand side where the arrow starts, January 1st, tax lien filed. Near the beginning of that arrow, let's see, what year is it? It's 2022 now, isn't it? Near the beginning of that arrow on the left-hand side, write 2022. This taxation timetable is referring to this year. You guys see where it says January 5th? Last year's tax must be paid. Does everybody see that? January 5th. Under January 5th, write 2023. This whole taxation timetable is referring to this year, except for that late date. So on January 1st, the tax lien is filed. Guys, Happy New Year. Every property in North Carolina is subject to taxation. So the first of the year, your property is subject to taxation. I don't know yet how much it's going to be. I don't know what your tax rate is, but I do know it's January 1st. It's a new year. So now your property is subject to taxation. Fast forward a bit down our timeline. July 1st, the new tax rate is set. Again, each city sets their own, county, municipality. All tax rates are different. In August, the bills are made. The taxes are not due and payable until September 1st. I'm not making a correction. I'm just helping you guys. So at the beginning of the timeline, the arrow on the left where it starts, you're writing 2022 to indicate that's the current year that we're looking at. And then under January 5th, you're writing 2023. So we're in September of 2022. The tax bill is due and payable. When that bill comes out on September 1st, how long do you have to pay the taxes? You have until January 5th next year. Failure to pay your taxes by January 5th of next year means you're delinquent, and they will file a lien. They will put a specific lien on the property so they can collect those delinquent taxes. As long as you pay your taxes September 1st to January 4th, January 5th, I guess, you're all set. Now, where are my homeowners on this call? A couple of you. You guys, if you have a mortgage, if you haven't worked with a lender, they collect those taxes from you throughout the year, right? And then at some point at the end of the year, they pay your taxes on your behalf. We're going to talk more about that process when we get into our financing units, units 14 and 15. But what if you're a cash buyer? Or what if you have paid that mortgage off? Now you don't have anybody collecting taxes on your behalf, do you? And paying that bill on your behalf. Because if the lender's not in the picture, they're not going to do it for you. So if you don't have a loan, if you don't have, a mortgage on the property, then you're going to have to pay that tax bill when it comes due. So January 5th. Remember last week when we talked about encumbrances? And we talked about liens, and we said all liens are paid in the order in which they're recorded, except for the mechanic's lien is paid in the order in which the work began. Also remember we talked about superior liens. Real property taxes are one of our superior liens. So if you're delinquent, if you didn't pay 2021 taxes, you now have a lien on your property. When you go to sell, those taxes will be paid before anything else. So tax liens and government special assessments take priority over any other lien. Questions with the taxation timetable? Everybody see what I want you guys to do? I want you to see that January 5th isn't until you're late, isn't until delinquent next year. In North Carolina, we do an Octennial Appraisal. An Octennial Appraisal means that our assessed value is reassessed every 8 years. Again, the process is different. When you're determining assessed value for tax purposes for a property, you're looking at a whole city or a whole quarter of a city or a whole subdivision. You with me? You're looking at a huge area. They're not going in the homes. They may not even be driving down the streets. They're just trying to find an assessed value for that area. May that be a city, just depends on population, density, So the assessed value is maybe reassessed every 8 years. There are rules in place that allow cities or counties to do a horizontal adjustment every 4 years. And a horizontal adjustment every 4 years would be, for example, 0.4 increase across the board. I'm not assessing anything. I'm not determining tax value on anything. I'm just saying everybody that falls within this county has a 0.4 increase on their tax rate. Please understand, tax rates change from year to year. It's the assessed value that follows the Octennial Appraisal or the horizontal adjustment. Tax value and list price or sales price are in no way related. Tax value and sales price, tax value and list price are in no way related. So when the seller calls you to list their property and they say, how much should we list it for? Don't look at the taxes. They are in no way related. It's two totally separate things. We'll talk all about determining the appropriate listing price. That's in unit 17 also. Our appraisal unit covers that as well. So when the seller looks at you and says, how much should I list my property to? You have an educated response. You're not just blurting a number out there. And you're certainly not looking at the taxes. They are in no way related. So over on page 62, again, the appraisal and the assessment for tax purposes are totally different. Make a note, the appraisal we'll talk about in unit 17. Right now, we're focusing on assessment for tax purposes. Right now, for example, asking prices and closing prices, we're in a seller's market. So right now, what we're selling it for is a lot higher than what the taxes are. And buyers like to look at that and say, why are they asking so much? The tax value is only X amount. They're not related. And that's part of what we're doing, you guys, is helping to educate the public. When your buyer says that, and explain to them, they're not the same thing. Flip that coin. What if we were in a buyer's market? It might be that the tax value is close to what the asking price is. The sellers may be looking at that tax value going, my home is worth more than that. Tax assessment has nothing to do with worth. Worth is how much is a buyer willing to pay. And that's that supply and demand. Lots of things affect how much that buyer is willing to pay. So help educate the public, make sure they understand they're not paying too much, they're not paying too little as it relates to the tax assessed value. The only thing the tax assessed value tells us is it helps us give the basis for what our annual taxes are going to be this year. So real property taxes are one of our superior liens. Superior liens are always paid first. Another superior lien is our special assessments, government special assessments. So if the government puts a special assessment on the property, they're making a public improvement to the property. Maybe they're paving the streets on a private road. We're going to talk about streets in unit 6. Maybe they're installing sidewalks or street lighting. Maybe they're connecting an entire neighborhood up to public sewer. If they're improving your property, you will get to share in some of that cost. And that'll show up in the form of a special assessment. And government special assessments and real property taxes are our superior liens, which means they're always paid first. All other liens after that are paid in the order in which they're recorded, except for the mechanics lien that's paid in the order in which the work began. Any questions so far on taxes? Yeah, well, what are you gonna do? That's the only thing in life we can count on, right? Death and taxes. That's it. Everything else is up in the air. Real property taxes are paid first, superior lien to all others. Excuse me, IRS taxes. IRS taxes are a general lien. General liens are paid. They're in that order in which it recorded. So last week we talked about our lien priority. So North Carolina does not do a tax assessment every year. That's correct. What does change is the tax rate, not the assessed value, but the rate. And remember, this applies. What do I mean in the order in which it's recorded? Superior liens are paid first, da-da-da. This is when you go to convey the property. You cannot convey a property without standing liens on it. You got to pay off all your debt before you can sell the property, before you can hand your deed to somebody else. That's part of the process of the attorney, is to make sure all those liens are paid. Find them and make sure that they're paid. And that's why they put them on public record, so we can find them. We're protecting the interest of the new owner. Would you be mad if you bought a house and you found out after the fact that there's 4 liens attached to it that you didn't have anything to do with? Heck yeah.
Julie?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm reading that, is it Octennial Reappraisal? Okay, it says that it's reappraised every 8 years. Okay, so under that, it says real property may be reassessed more frequently than every 8 years.
Correct. So they may do a horizontal adjustment every 4 years.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Question came in. The city's doing sidewalks in front of the house. They purchased a strip of land. Did they do eminent domain? I guess that's my question to you. They did eminent domain. We're going to talk about, have we talked? No, we haven't talked about eminent domain yet. I think we're getting to that in unit 5 or 6. So they might have purchased that strip of property. Unit 5. Okay, yeah. So we'll talk about eminent domain. Okay. All right. The rest of this unit is some math. So first off, here's your T-bar. If you want to jot this down or take a picture, remember all of my PowerPoints are in Learn, Test, Pass. I do suggest you at least write down the T-bar because we're going to refer back to it. The formulas you're looking at the bottom are the formulas that the T-bar just gives you. So if you're writing, please do so rapidly, but at least get the T-bar down on your paper so we can change slides and talk about it. When we're doing these math problems, we could be asked to find annual tax bill. We could be asked to find the assessed value, or we could be asked to find the tax rate. And the one thing that I like so much about the T-bar is it gives me the ability to find any of these. The T-bar allows me to solve for any of these 3 variables. Annual tax bill, please note the word annual. We'll talk more about that in just a second, but that's very important. The assessed value, and then the tax rate. Thank you. Anybody have the T-bar? Anybody have it jotted down so we can talk about it? So as we said earlier, property taxes are calculated in 1 of 2 ways. In North Carolina, we use ad valorem. We use a tax rate of per 100. So for example, if the problem tells you the city tax rate is 0.73 per 100, in this case, the word per is just a fancy word for divide, right? So 0.73 per 100 on your calculator, do 0.73 divided by 100, whoops, and you get a rate of 0.0073. That 0.0073 is what goes in the bottom right. you may have to do a little bit of work before you can use the T-bar. And that's what we're doing here. 0.73 per 100 cannot go in the T-bar. So what do I put in the T-bar? 0.0073. I figure out my tax rate. Also, just as a point, this is city tax rate. You got city tax rate, county tax rate. You may have school board. Again, we're doing whatever the problem tells you. But guys, one way they like to trick you in some of your practice problems, so I'll go ahead and prepare you for this. Some of your practice problems may say it might give you a city tax rate. And then, for example, it might give you a county tax rate. And if you're located in the city limits, and I'm just kind of making stuff up, if you're located within the city limits, then you get to pay city and county, right? If you're in the city limits, you pay city taxes and you pay county taxes. But if you're just located in the county, if you're outside of the city, do you have to pay city taxes? No, no. If you're not located in the city, you don't have to pay city taxes. So again, you got to read these problems. You gotta be able to interpret what they're saying. So if they give you city and county and you're in the city limits, you pay both. If they give you city and county and you're not located in the city, that information is called a distractor. I think as we learned last week, a distractor's job is to do what? It's to distract you. So stay focused on what the question's asking you, stay focused on the information of the problem. So one way to calculate taxes is a tax rate per 100. The other way that we talked about was using our mills. So 1/1000. So for example, if the problem tells you 17 mills, on your calculator, you just take 17, divide it by 1,000, and the number that goes on the bottom right is 0.017. I can't put 17 1,000s in the T-bar. Does that make sense? Does everybody see what we're doing here? I'm preparing this information to get it ready for the T-bar. So when I see 17 mills, I have to take 17 and divide it by 1,000, and 0.017 is what I can use in my T-bar. And as we said earlier, what if it tells you 0.017 and it asks you, how many mills is that? So what's the opposite of divide? Multiply. So you take 0.017 times 1,000 and you get 17 mills. Again, the problem's going to give you tax rate per 100 or mills. They're not going to give you both. But we need to know what to do with both. Maybe they'll tell you per 100. I doubt they're going to tell you 1/1000. So we need to know the difference. Any questions on tax rate per 100 or mills? Okay. So let's go ahead and take our first break. And when we come back, we're gonna jump in and start working problems together. The way I typically do math is I'll do 1 or 2 depending on our time, and then I'll let you guys do 1 or 2. I'm weaning you off. So we'll do 1 together, and then I'll let you do 1. So let's take 10. couple of you, everybody check your chat. I just sent a few of you a message about naming yourself. So make sure you weren't one of the ones without me calling anybody out.
I have a question. Okay, so when you say superior liens, are you talking about the Pacific liens?
And well,
Um,
superior liens are two. What are our two superior liens?
Because I don't know, I'm looking in the book and on the learn test pads, and I don't see superior liens. I just see the Pacific liens in general.
So our two superior liens are the ones that will always be paid first. Our real property taxes and our government special assessments.
Government. Okay, so special assessments and real property tax.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And you guys are, thank you. Guys, we're in the habit of, right, put yourself a post-it on your computer if you have to. Change my name when I get here. All right, so camera's on. Take attendance. Smile pretty for the camera. And let's do some math. Okay, so again, we're going to work through some of these together, and then, yeah, I'm going to let you guys do a few on your own, and then rest assured, I got plenty of practice for you. That's one thing you never have to worry about, is having enough math practice, because that's how you get good at it, right? All right, so first off, we see a problem. When you guys see a math problem, I want you guys just to read the problem first. Don't just jump into it and pick up a calculator and say, I can do this. Just read the problem first and take in what it's saying and take in what it's asking you. So the first problem we have says, calculate the annual property tax due for property in Forsyth County with a property tax rate of 1.01 per 100 and an assessed value of $250,000. So I've read that problem. I see the word rate or percent. Everybody see property tax rate? So I know I can use a T-bar. The majority of the time, when you see rate or percent, you know that you can use the T-bar. Remember, if you missed a screenshot for attendance, please tell me you're back. When I'm doing math, I always like to start with where I want to end. What does that mean? When I'm doing math, the very first thing I want to do is identify my X. The very first thing I want to do is identify what is the problem asking me. So we know our T-bar. You guys looking at your T-bar that you just wrote down from a few slides ago? You guys looking at that? So what's the problem want me to do? It wants me to calculate the annual property taxes, which means my X goes on top. That is my unknown variable, right? That is the only thing I care about. If there's information in the problem that doesn't get me to that X, then I don't care about. What's the information that gets me to the X? Assessed value and tax rate. Knowing your formulas is like 80% of the battle. If you don't know the formulas, you don't know what to do with the numbers. Okay? So we've identified our X. Now I start filling in the rest of what do I know? Well, my assessed value is $250,000. And I have a tax rate of 1.01 per 100. So that's a fancy way of saying divide. So I take 1.01 divided by 100, and I get a tax rate of 0.0101. That's the number that goes here. The up-down line means multiply. So to solve for X, I take 250,000 on my calculator times 0.0101, and I get annual taxes of $2,525. I identified my X. I focused only on what I care about. Obviously, as you do more of these problems are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. They like to put distractions, especially in math problems. They like to put more information in here than what you need to know. So I identified my X, I filled in my T-bar, and then in this case, I just multiplied 250,000 times 0.0101. Questions so far? You'll still get a chance to do your own. Don't worry. It's no fun just for me to do it all. I want you guys to have the fun too. Yes.
The multiply goes by the T on the right side and the division goes at the bottom of the T, right?
So this line, this up down line means multiply. This
Okay.
line means divide. The back fourth line means
Oh.
divide.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So remember earlier we were talking about assessed value and market value? The problem may give you both, but what does your formula say? What does your T-bar say? It says you use the assessed value. So if you see a problem with both, same problem we just had, except now I have a market value of 285,000 and an assessed value of 250,000. What does the formula tell you? The formula tells you that you use the assessed value. So in this case, if you were to see this problem, that market value is your distractor. See how easy do I use the 285? Do I use the 250? Oh, I don't know. I promise you, if you were to do this using 285, that answer would be a choice on your exam. I promise you. So how do you know which one to use? You know what the formula says. Put that on a flashcard. Put that on an index card. Guys, I'm not kidding when I say it. Knowing the formula is 80% of the battle. If you don't know the formula, you don't know what to do with the numbers. If you don't know the formula, you might as well just put B or C or A, whatever your favorite letter is, down and move on. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm trying to be very real. Why are you wasting precious test time if you don't know the formula, if you don't know what to do? So put formulas on a flashcard. Calculate, yep. What are we going to do with it? We're going to calculate it. Questions so far? Let's look at another one. Just read the problem first. Calculate the annual property tax due for a property in Forsyth County with a property tax rate of 1.01 per 100, a market value of 127,000, and an assessed value of 85% of market value. So again, I've read the problem. I see the word rate of percent. So I can throw down a T-bar. What am I solving for? Once again, I'm solving for my annual property tax. So where's my X go? My X goes on top. The only information I care about is the information that gets me to my X. Anybody remember, was it day 1 or day 2? I don't know, last week. Anybody remember what we do when we see the word of in a word problem? What does the word of mean? Thank you, Amin. Of means multiply. So when I'm finding my assessed value, I'm finding 85% of market value. My market value is 127,000. I want 85% of that. So I take 127,000 times 85% to get my assessed value of 107,950. Isn't that what my formula calls for? Does the formula want the market value or the assessed value? It wants the assessed value. So now I have my number in the bottom right. And then I got my rate per 100, which gives me 0.0101. Now that my T-bar is complete, now that I've filled in everything I need for my T-bar, the last step to do is just what? In this case, again, my up-down line means multiply. So I take on your calculator, take 107,950 times 0.0101. And I get annual taxes We'll round. I got 0.295. So I just rounded to 0.3. So how did I solve for annual taxes? I first found my assessed value. Then I found my tax rate. Then I multiplied. Please make sure your formula says annual property taxes. You know what they like to do to you guys sometimes? They might ask you for monthly taxes. If you solve for annual, how do you find monthly? I solve for annual, right? So then if I ask for monthly, I would have to take this a step further. How many months are in a year? 12 months in a year. So take your annual and divide by 12, and that would give you monthly. Again, I'm pretending, I'm going off problem for a second. So what if the problem said calculate the monthly property taxes? Again, guys, I can guarantee you the annual answer will be there. I promise you. So if you don't know what the problem is asking for, you're going to get it wrong. So once you solve for annual, then you divide it by 12 to get monthly. This is why I think when you guys are doing math, honestly, when you're doing math, I think you should read the problem 3 times. 1, just read it. 2 is when you put pencil to paper, pick up your calculator. And then the 3rd time you read it, make sure the answer you have is the answer that they're looking for. So if you solve for annual and they want monthly, take that 1 extra step and divide by 12. Questions? Okay, let's do another one. Make sure we're good. What is the assessed value of a property located in Kernersville with a tax rate of 0.85 per 100 and an annual tax bill of $3,331? I've read the problem. I saw a rate or percent. I can throw down my T-bar. Now to identify my X, what is it asking for? Now my X is asking for the assessed value. We know our formula, right? So we know now what I'm solving for is the bottom left. Always start with where you want to end. That's your focus. And that's all you care about. I know my annual taxes are $3,371. I know my rate is 0.85 per 100 or 0.0085. Now to solve for X, now that my T-bar is complete, I solve for X. The back 4th line means what? It means divide. So on your calculator, you take 3,371, divide 0.0085 equals our assessed value. Again, I'm just rounding. Well, 396. Whoa, typo. $396,588. So what's the assessed value? I took my annual taxes, I divided by the tax rate, and I got an assessed value of $396,588. Do I have any T-bar fans yet? I'm working on you. A couple of you, good. The rest of you, don't worry. I'll get you. Yeah, William.
I have a question. That 0.85, that line going across, that's to multiply with the 100?
Which line? This one right here?
Yeah, because
That means divide.
Oh, I was multiplying it because I didn't get the 2 zeros in the front.
So
Okay.
0.85 divided by 100.
So that's divide. Okay, got it.
Yep. Per sometimes is a fancy word for divide. In this case, when you're looking at tax rate. Per is a fancy word for divide. Thank you, William. Okay. All right. Now it's time for y'all to have fun. I'm going to turn you guys loose. I'm going to put a problem up. Everybody set your chat to a private chat. You're only telling me the answer, but I want to hear from all of you guys. I'm going to give you a couple, I don't know, we'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes. I'm going to put a question up. Tell me in a private chat what you think. A, B, C, or D. Give you about 30 more seconds, and we'll talk about it. Okay. So what do we do first? It's the very first thing you do when you see a math problem. You just pick up your pencil and start doing stuff. No, just read it. Just read it. The current market value of a property is $135,000. For tax purposes, it is assessed at 60% of market value. The tax rate is 2.45 per 100 of assessed value. What is the annual tax liability? And we're going to round. I saw the word rate or percent. Did anybody else see that word rate or percent? My brain, when you see rate or percent, throw down a T-bar. I can do something with it. And we're always going to start with where we want to end. So start by identifying your X. What's the problem asking me for? It wants my annual taxes, which is the number on top. How do I know that? Because I know my formula. Bottom line, I know my formula. So I'm solving for X. Now I start filling in the rest of what I know. For tax purposes, it's assessed at 60% of market value. The word of means what? The word of means multiply. So I know my market value is $135,000, and I'm doing it of 60%. So I'm going to take my market value and times 60% to get assessed value of $81,000. My formula says assessed value goes down here. Everybody with me so far? I had to find my assessed value. My assessed value is what? 60% of market value. My tax rate is 2.45 per 100, which means divide. So my tax rate is 0.0245, which is what your T-bar formula says goes here. Now that my T-bar is complete, the very last thing I do is what? Solve for X. And to do that, I multiply. What's my up-down line mean? This line right here on my T-bar, it means multiply. So I take 81,000 times 0.0245, and I round it a little bit, and I got annual taxes of $19.85. If you didn't get it right, do you see now where you went wrong? If you didn't get it right, that's okay. That's why we're here. That's why we're practicing. That's why we're learning. We're getting you guys ready for these tests. And when it comes to math, how do you get ready for the tests? Practice, practice, practice. If you got C real easily, I say good for you, but hear me when I say watching me do it is really easy. The true test is going to be how you do on your own. And that's why I give you guys practice, practice, practice. If you don't like the T-bar, don't use the T-bar. Remember what we said last week. I don't care how you get to the mall. Just get to the mall. As long as you get C, you don't have to show me your work. I'm getting ready to do another one. And I got lots of homework for you. Not homework, practice. You don't have to show me your work. All you have to do is put C down on a piece of paper. Fair enough? Questions? Do you have to convert to decimal? Like here? Where are you at? Is that what you're asking me here? Yeah, because this is my rate. I can't use 2.45 per 100 in the T-bar. Right? So I have to do something with that number to get it T-bar ready. Now, if you're not using the T-bar and you're still getting C, then you did it right. Everybody, does that make sense?
I got it.
Yeah.
I got it right. I just didn't know how important. I just hit the percent sign when I just hit 2.45%. I know it's the same thing, but.
Did you get C?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
I love the T-bar, by the way.
Thank you. Me too. Like I said, if I haven't gotten you yet, don't worry, I will. Oh, I got plenty of time. I'll get you. All right, one more. Y'all, let's see. Pencil to paper. First, you're going to read the question, right? Put pencil to paper, do something. It's okay to look at your formula now. Refer back to the T-bar now. You guys are learning. So as you're learning, refer back to it to know what to do with the information. So everybody tell me in a chat. I'll give you about 4 minutes again. Did it switch? No, there we go. A, B, C, or D? I think some of you should go back and read the problem a third time. I'm just saying. Do about 30 more seconds, then we'll talk about it. Okay. So what do we do first? Remember, math, we're reading problems 3 times. Why the third time? I think some of you learned why. Just make that mistake once, okay? So first, just read the problem. The market value of a house is $84,500. Taxes are assessed at 35% of market value. The tax rate is 30 mils. What are the monthly taxes? What's the problem asking me for? Monthly taxes. What does my T-bar tell me to solve for? Annual taxes. See what they like, guys, this is not me being mean. This is me showing you the things that you can see on your exam. I mean, I could make this stuff really easy. Would I be doing you a disservice? Big time. Okay. So I saw the word rate or percent. I threw down my T-bar. I threw down my T-bar and I first identified my X. In order to get to monthly taxes, I first have to solve for annual taxes. Go back and look at your formula. What does your formula solve for? Annual taxes. To get to monthly, I first get to annual. Is everybody with me? So I identified my X. It tells me the market value is 84,500. Taxes are assessed at 35% of market value. So market value of 84,500. Of means multiply times 35%. So I took my market value times 35%. And I get an assessed value of $29,575. I want to live here. Where's this county or city? So $29,575. Again, what does your formula ask for? Your formula tells you you need the assessed value. How do I find the assessed value? The problem tells me everything you need is in the problem. Assessed value is 35% of market value. What's a mill? See why we need to know this? What's a mill? You can tell me in the chat. Make sure we're all on the same page. A mill is, yeah. A mill is 1/1000th. So if I have 30 mil, I take 30 and divide by 1,000. And I get a rate, a number that I can use in my T-bar if this is the route that you're going, of 0.03. The last step is to multiply. No, the next to last step. See what we almost did there? The next to last step is multiply. Up down line means what? Multiply. So I take 29,575 times 0.03. I get annual taxes of $887,025. The answer is A. I'm moving on. Guess what? You just got the problem wrong. Is that not frustrating? Get the problem wrong because you don't know how to do it. Don't get the problem wrong because you just don't divide by 12. So by solving for annual, I can now divide by 12 to get monthly, which tells me that my answer, what are my monthly taxes? $73 $73.94. How much are my taxes each month? $73.94. So once you got 887.25, and a couple of you came in the chat and said, oh, I went through that too fast. Oh, I skipped that. Learn from this. This is what we're doing. I like in the map, somebody told me you watched a baby learn how to crawl this weekend. And I love that you said that, because I tend to liken the math to kids learning how to walk. Have you ever had the privilege of watching a kid learn how to walk? They stand up, kind of teeter around a little bit. They look like little Frankensteins, right? Like, do they fall down sometimes when they're learning how to walk? Sure. And what do they do when they fall down? They get up and try it again, don't they? They don't just sit there and say, well, can't do it, not going to walk. They get up. Sometimes there's tears involved. I understand that. Sometimes there's tears involved, but ultimately they get up and they try it again, and they do it every time that they're learning how to walk. And that's what you guys should be doing with the math. Learn from your mistakes, get up and try it again.
Hi, Julie.
Yes, ma'am.
I got that answer right, but I honestly don't even understand. I didn't even know I got it right.
Well, you did something right.
I did.
So go back and study your formulas.
I want to be sure.
Okay. Is there something in particular, or do you want me to go through it again real quick? Because you got the recording too. Practice, you guys. Practice, practice, practice. Okay. So we first identified our X. What's your formula say? I'm going to go back. What do I mean by the formula? What does this thing say? Annual tax bill goes on top. Assessed value goes on the bottom left. Tax rate goes on the bottom right. If you don't like the T-bar, you have these three formulas to solve for tax rate, assessed value. So step one is knowing the formula, whichever one you prefer. I'm solving for my X. The formula tells me I want my assessed value in the bottom left. What's my assessed value? My assessed value is 35% of market value. So I take my market value, 84,500 times 35% to get my assessed value. A mil is 1/1000th. Take 30 divided by 1,000 to get a rate of 0.03. Multiply to get annual. Divide by 12 to get monthly. Somebody asked if we have more practice. Yes. Always have practice with math. A question came in if he'll ask for annual in the future, like what will be in 3 years? No, because I don't know the tax rate in 3 years, right? So back to your taxation timetable, taxes are always done annually. That tax rate is assessed each year. So this is like part of what we're going to do with taxes. We're going to do more with taxes when we get into unit 21. So everybody just put your pencil down for a second. Everybody just put your pencil down and take a big deep breath with me. Ready, everybody? Doesn't breathing feel nice? Y'all always remember to breathe, okay? So put your pencil down. Remember, you're recording, and we're going to see this again in 21, but I just kind of want to give you an introduction of what to expect when we get to 21. What are we going to do with these annual property taxes? And in unit 21, we're going to introduce something to you called proration. And when I'm prorating, I'm just dividing something proportionately for two parties. I'm making it fair. So for example, when talking about real property taxes, if you sell your house this year, you're the owner today, you sell your house this year. Is it fair for you to be responsible for the entire year's taxes? If you don't own the property for the whole, let's say you sell it in August. Somebody else buys your house in August. Is that fair for you to be responsible for the entire year's taxes? Everybody shake your head no. What if you're buying the house in March? Is it fair for you to be responsible for the entire year's taxes? No. So how do we make it fair between buyer and seller the year of closing? We prorate it. The seller's responsible for their fair share. The buyer's responsible for their fair share. And this is the math, that proration math. We're going to take those annual taxes in Unit 21 and we're going to prorate them. We're going to make it fair between the two parties. Other things that we typically see in with proration, we're going to share this year's annual property taxes. We may also share the HOA dues. HOA dues could be monthly. They could be quarterly. They could be annually. Obviously, the problem has to tell you. But again, if HOA dues are monthly and we go to closing today, is it fair for you to pay the entire month of January's taxes if you don't own the property for the entire month? So this idea of proration is just making it fair. Rent is something else that we prorate. We're going to learn more about this, but buyers buy honoring existing leases, which means when they buy and there's an existing lease and tenant in place, the buyer buys the property honoring that. We'll talk more about that. But rent is something else that we'll prorate. When we get to Unit 21, we're going to try and make this a little simpler for you guys. In pre-licensing world, every month has 30 days for a total of 360 days in the year in pre-licensing world. So in pre-licensing world, how many days are in January? 30. In pre-licensing world, how many days are in October? 30. Evidently in pre-licensing world, we don't get Halloween. We just skip it, right? You guys with me? Every month has 30 days. You take 30 times 12 and you get 360 days in a year. Again, talk a lot more about this in Unit 21, just introducing you to it. So if you have your annual taxes, and maybe you want to convert them to daily, maybe you want to break them down to daily. So you would just take annual, once you solve for that X on top, divided by 360, and that gives you daily taxes. Very similar to what we just did with monthly, but we need to know how many days we're working for. Again, monthly. We take annual divided by 12, and that would give you monthly taxes. So it all starts with annual taxes. Then we break it down to monthly or daily accordingly, however the problem is worded, whatever it's asking for. And again, this is the kind of math that you can expect to see in Unit 21. So again, with your pencils down, let's just look at a quick problem together. A property is located in Davie County. It is subject to an ad valorem tax rate of 0.80 per $100 of value. Property's assessed tax value is $172,500. Using a 360-day year, what are the daily property taxes owed on the home? So we're asking for daily property taxes. In order for me to get to daily, I first have to solve for annual. And how do I know that? Because that's what the formula tells me. The formula tells me I solve for annual, taking it a step further to solve for daily. So throw down my T-bar. Identify where I want to end, which is my annual taxes. The assessed value is the number that goes on the bottom left. Why do I know that? Because I know what my formula says. And I take 0.80 divided by 100. Get 0.008. Up down line means multiply. Take 172,500 divided by, multiply 172,500, multiply 0.008. I get annual 1,380. Is that my answer? Am I done? No, because what's the problem asking me for? Daily. So now that I've solved for annual, take it a step further. and I get daily taxes of 3.83. Every day this year, taxes are $3.83. So how are we going to split this fairly between buyer and seller the year of closing? We're going to break taxes down to a daily amount. Again, we'll talk more about that when we get into Unit 21. So that's just kind of a preview for you, kind of give you an idea of where we're heading, what we're going to do. For right now, focus on the math that we did. So is there practice? I love it. You guys are all about practice. So first off, before we talk about math practice, let's finish Unit 3. Those key terms are on page 51. That key point review, your key point review is your Cliff's Notes, your abbreviated version of the entire unit. Use it as a checklist. I know this, I know that, I know this. I don't really remember that. Go back and review it. And then your student quiz on 67 and 69. There is math in the student quiz in Unit 3. So the end of the units, the key point review and the student quiz. And then for the math, practice, practice, practice. Math concepts. Let's look at these math concepts real quick. Math concepts in your book on page, that's not right. It's page 63 and 64. I'll fix that. 63 and 64. Guys, we don't read math. We do math. Reading math doesn't do you any good at all. So when you're looking at pages 63 and 64, the math concepts, it's explaining the math that we just went over. If you're not sure, if you're not clear of what we just did, you have the explanation in your book. You see about halfway down, it gives you 3 formulas on page 63. It gives you 3 formulas. You have choices. You either memorize those 3 formulas or you use the T-bar. I took those 3 formulas and put them in a T-bar, whichever one you want. Come down a little bit further on page 63. Do you see example 1, example 2, example 3? Everybody see where I'm at? When it says example, don't read it. That's not how you learn math. How do you learn math? When you see example, you work the problem. You put pencil to paper. You do it in your own style. 1, it gives you practice, but 2, it allows you to see it in your own style of doing it. Reading example 1 is not going to do you any good whatsoever. Everybody hear what I'm saying? So these math concepts are good. If you didn't quite grasp it, that's okay. You just met it. Nobody is expected to leave this call today as an expert on calculating annual property taxes. You just learned it. Go easy on yourself. Go through the math concepts. Do the examples. Give yourself that extra practice. In the back of your textbook, on pages 803 to 808, there are 50 extra math problems back there. And what I do, once we go through math in class, I pull out the numbers that relate to the math that we just did. So in those 50 problems in the very back of the book, pages 803 to 808, numbers 6, 18, and 38 relate to the math that we just worked in class together. The problems in the back of the book on 803 to 808 are hard, so build up to them. Do the others, do the ones at the end of Unit 3, do the ones in the math concepts first. Build up to them. What are the numbers? They're right here, 6, 18, and 38. And then I got some practice for you guys in Learn, Test, Pass. I'll show you in just one second. I've had a request to go back. Guys, remember, the beginning of each unit has key terms. The end of every unit has a key point review and a student quiz. And the last thing I want to say before we look and Learn, Test, Pass together at where you can find practice, this is something called the learning pyramid. This is as it relates to adults learning. And this is from the National Training Laboratories. Look how much you just gained in class from doing this with me. You're up here at the top of the pyramid, right? You have a 5%, 10% retention rate. What happens when you start doing it on your own? You go back and watch it again. You do math concepts. You practice. See how much of a retention you gain by doing it on your own, by practicing. So again, even if you did get it today, great. Still go through and do the practice. If you didn't, go back and watch the recording. Take it at your own pace. Do the math concepts, work through it. Not doing anything is not going to help you. Practice. I told you guys last week, you're going to be sick of me saying that. We're already on week 2. Is anybody tired of me yet? Don't, because we just started with the math. Practice. The math on this exam and your national exam. Honestly, truth be told, I don't think the math alone can fail you. Meaning, whoops, I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second. Meaning, if you miss all the math, you could still pass this exam, both exams. But if you want to give yourself a couple extra points, the math can help up your score. Because if you're missing the math, you got to get pretty much everything else right. Get all the math wrong, you can still, it's still possible to pass. Does that make sense? It's still possible to pass. But if you can get some of the math, you've given yourself an advantage. You've given yourself some leverage. So the Unit 3 materials, there's a couple quizzes in here. I love this ownership and interest quiz. This is an application quiz, which is a big chunk of what your exams are. It's not just knowing what this word means, it's applying it in a situation. So I think this is a great sample of an application quiz. Here's, let's see, yeah, encumbrances in real property. Again, learn, test, pass questions. Students have said tend to be more applicable of what they're going to see on their exam. So start with the end of the unit textbook and build your way up to learn, test, pass from there. And then I also have a property tax math worksheet. So there's what, a handful of questions, 11 questions. And I do include the solutions for you guys, but don't look at the solutions until you try it on your own. Okay, studying the solutions is not going to help you. So take this like a real test, grade yourself, see how you did. Question came in, can you retake the learn, test, pass quizzes? Absolutely. Question came in about joint ownership, joint tenancy. Can you pass the interest of the people on the deed, not the heirs? It depends if right of survivorship, if we have right of survivorship or not. So remember, if it's a national, right of survivorship is automatic. In North Carolina, right of survivorship has to be included. So it should be in the question what you mean, the information. Questions about the math, property tax math. How are we feeling? Can I get some thumbs ups? We're going to practice. Everybody shake your head. Yes. Yes, Julie, I'm going to practice because that's how we get good at it. I wish I could give you guys a magic pill. I wish I could give you a magic pill that could put all this information in your brain. All you got to do is take the pill. Truth be told, if I had a magic pill, I would not be standing here in front of you guys. I'd be out on the street somewhere selling my magic pill, right? So I'm here, no pill. Practice. Good. Some of you are already dug into learn, test, pass. Again, overwhelmingly, when Lane and I ask, what did you do to get your license? What did you do to pass your state exam? Overwhelmingly, we hear, I studied my butt off and I did everything in learn, test, pass. You take with that and do with it what you will. Okay? All right, no more math today. No more math again until Thursday. So let's take 10. We'll come back. We're going to keep going. Get into Unit 4. All right. Did we come back? You guys feel good? You got through your first math lesson. Not all chapters or not all units have math. Some do, some don't. So whenever they do, we'll give you the formula, work through it together, let you work some, and then always, rest assured, I will always give you practice. All right, so if you're back, cameras are on. I'm going to take attendance. I don't know. I got like 2 screens of you guys. So best way to know if your camera's on, look up. Do you see a light? Do you see a light on your device? That's how you know. Okay. You guys want to play a game? You guys like games? Who likes games? Okay. Let's play a game, and the game is called Kahoot. Anybody know Kahoot? So get your phones. We're going to Kahoot. Kahoot is an interactive game, one-on-one. And what you're going to do eventually is put the answer in your phone. Nobody will ever see what your answer is. Nobody will ever see what your answer is. But then once we put our answers in, then we're going to wait and see what everybody else as a whole says. So first off, to join, you're either going to go get the app, the Kahoot app. Does everybody see this up here? Or you go to the website. We're up here. I think the app is better. And we're going to Kahoot several times together. So if you download the app, I think the Kahoot app is best. The website does also work. I know some people are, my husband's really funny about downloading apps. He won't download apps. So if the website's your preference, that's why they give you choices. First time we Kahoot, it's going to take the longest because I got to get you guys set up. The first time in. Once you're in, it's going to ask you for a game pin. Ooh, they even got QR codes now too. That's new. How about that? So you can scan the QR code and get in that way too. Once you're in, it'll ask you for a game pin. This game pin is 6979498 right here. Game pins are different every time. So, and then once you put the game pin in, it'll ask you for a name. As we're starting to see people are coming in. You can use a nickname. I don't care if you use your own name or not. Just keep it clean. That's all I ask when you're putting a name in. Again, I know you're downloading the app. I know this first time takes time. Once you, as you guys are doing this, again, let me explain. So what's going to happen is right now, you probably don't see much on your phone. You're fine. You probably don't see much on your phone once you're in. So in just a second, once we get everybody in, I'm going to put a question up on my computer screen. So everybody needs to be looking at your screen to look at mine. I'm going to put a question up. And when I put the question up, your phone's going to change and you're going to have 4 choices. So you touch on your phone what you think the right answer is. And then at the end of the time, we'll see how everybody did as a whole. Again, nobody will ever see what you did. That's only for you to know, but use this as a learning experience, right? If you got it wrong, maybe that's a question you should go back and review. So I know that getting that, the game pin is right here, 6979498. And then once you put your game pin in, where do you put it? So if you're using the app, and this is where it's hard because I can't run over there and look behind your shoulder. So this is where being online is hard. But if you're on the app, you should have a block like in the bottom center of your phone. It's like a little red square, blue square, green square, and yellow square. You see that little block? if you touch on that, if you did the app, if you're not able to get in this time, you can always play in your mind and then hang out with me after class and we'll get you in for the next time. Again, we're going to Kahoot several times. So give you a couple more minutes to get everybody in that wants to play. If not, you can always play in your mind. You can always send me a direct message. Anybody ever Kahooted before? Couple of you? Couple of you? Okay, Becca, thank you. So our new QR code, if you scan the code, you don't even have to create an account. It's just taking you straight to the game pen. Thank you. That's new. Let's see, my last pre-licensing class ended, I guess, around Thanksgiving. So they've obviously made, this is the first time I've Kahooted since Thanksgiving. So they've made some changes, always updating and stuff. So thank you for that, Becca. And if your phone goes to sleep, you're gonna go away. Your name's gonna disappear from my screen. So just wake your phone up and you should come back. That's right. Your screen's not saying much right now. It's just telling you you're in. Your screen won't change until I put a question up. Give you another minute or so. Again, if you're not able to get in, just hang out with me after class and we'll get you in. For right now, you can just play via direct message. Looks like I got most of you. Somebody's phone just went to sleep. So after each question has an allotted time. And after each question, it rates you. So we'll have first place, second place, third place. How do you get ranked? Not only do you get the question right, but it depends on how fast you answer it. So if you get it right fast, you could be ranked first, second, or third. Real estate agents, we tend to be competitive. So I'm bringing out your early competitiveness. And hear me when I say this. Once you select an answer, you can't change it. There is no going back. So once you select an answer on your phone, so the first question I'm getting ready to come up is just kind of our test, our trial and error to make sure that we're all good. Okay. So we're going to go ahead. Got a few more of you coming in. We're going to go ahead and get started again. If you're having problems, please just hang on after class. Play along in your mind for right now. You can even send me a direct message if you can't answer on your phone. And just hang out with me after class and we'll make sure that we get you in. Okay. But it looks like I got most of you. So if you're having problems, just hang out with me. So we're going to walk through this first one together. So I'm going to start the Kahoot. This Kahoot is on units 2 and 3. And the first question, the main purpose of the North Carolina Real Estate Commission is, now look at your phone. Do you guys see you select red, you select blue, you select that weird mustard color, or you select green? Again, once you hit your phone, there is no going back. So this is our test question. I got one more second left. So the end of this question, boom, it tells us not only the correct answer, but it gives us a gauge of how we did as a class. So the main purpose of the Real Estate Commission is to protect the public. What's one way they can protect the public? They issue us our license. We have to prove to the commission that we're worthy of working with their public. They're not just going to hand you a license. And how do you prove to the commission that you're worthy of working with their public? You pass my test and you pass your state exam. You prove to the commission that you have the minimum competency necessary to work with their public. The main purpose being to protect the public. Questions on this or questions on Kahoot? Everybody see it? Everybody's phone did what it was supposed to if you were up? So now, like I said, at the end of each question, it ranks you. So it's not only that you get it right, but it's who got it right the fastest. So coming out the gate, we had essence answered it right the fastest. Good job. Brooklyn was after her, Gracie, James, and then Alicia. First, second, third, and fourth. Questions on Kahoot. I will shut up, by the way, when the question comes up, so you guys don't have to listen to me talk. That was just the first one. Questions or comments? Is this fun? Oh, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Again, use this. If you got that question wrong, go back and review. Okay. All right. Let's Kahoot for real. Question number 2. The rights of ownership of real property include all of the following except. You got about 10 more seconds to answer. The rights of ownership of real property include all of the following, good job, except, remember our legal bundle of rights. And how to remember our legal bundle of rights. We talked about deep C. So what are our twigs? Deep C, very beginning of unit 2. One thing that was not a twig was a pertinent. Bundle of rights are not a pertinent. Bundle of rights can be unbundled. So if you got this one wrong, go back and review your deep C, very beginning of unit 2. Questions on this one? So now we got Essence and Brooklyn staying on top. Those are the 2 we're going to have to watch out for, you guys. That's easy to learn early on, right? Where's your competitiveness? Alex moved up, Christina moved up, and is it Christina and Christina? Oh goodness, could I mess that up? But Christina and Christina both moved up. They not only answered it right, but the fastest, and that's how you're ranked. And this isn't as much important to me as it is you guys getting it right. Fair enough? Another way to gauge yourself with some fun. Question number 3, the rights of the owner of property located along the banks of a small stream are called. Ten seconds to answer. The rights of the owner of real property of stream are our riparian rights. Littoral rights are what? Bodies of water with a tide. Riparian rights are bodies of water without a tide. So why is it riparian? Because it's a small stream. Small streams don't have tides. So riparian and littoral are our water rights back in unit 2. Subjacent and lateral are just our support rights. How's the property being supported? Questions on this one? We're doing good. Have you guys looked ahead in Kahoot? No, I'm just kidding. You guys were doing good. So now we got Essence. Looks like Christina was a little bit faster. Brooklyn and Christina, and Jolie's creeping up. Natasha Thomas is our highest climber. She's up 10 places. Sometimes it gives us fun facts like that. So Natasha's our highest climber this round. Question 4, a brother and sister cannot concurrently own real estate in North Carolina as. Ten seconds. Brother and sister cannot concurrently own real estate in North Carolina as tenants by the entirety. Why? Tenants by the entirety is set aside for who? Married people. Brother and sister can't be married because, you know, ew. So the one way they can't own property is by tenants by the entirety. You got to be married to be tenants by the entirety. Maybe other states. I'm not going to specifically mention which state just came up in the scroll because I might have somebody from that state. But North Carolina, brother and sister cannot take title as tenants by the entirety. Questions on this one? Let's see. As since Brooklyn came back up, Christina, Jolie, and now Valen, I hope I'm saying that right. Maggie is our highest climber this time. She's up 6 places. Question number 5, which of the following is a lien on real estate? What is a lien? Ten seconds. Which of the following is a lien, a mortgage? When you see lien, what word do you see? When you say lien, see the word loan. If you have a mortgage, that means you owe somebody some money, right? If you have a mortgage, you owe the lender some money. So the mortgage is our lien. Everything is an encumbrance on this slide. One type of encumbrance is a lien. One type of lien is a mortgage. Question on this one. So we got, this is tight. Christina was the quickest. Essence, Brooklyn, Valen, Alicia has climbed up. 4 of you are on fire. 4 of you have an answer streak of 4. So you get the little fire emblem. Do you guys see that on your end? Or is it just what you're looking at here? Some of you are saying yes. Okay. I don't see what you see. So that's good to know. The last one, which of the following is not required to be recorded in order to be valid? Ten seconds. Which of the following is not required to be valid? Good job. Is our Valorem taxes. Every property is subject to taxation on January 1st. When does the recording matter? It matters when you're delinquent in January 5th of next year. Everybody owes taxes this year. What are we, January 11th? Everybody in the state of North Carolina owes property taxes. What do we need to be notified? What, if more importantly, does our attorney need to be notified of? If you're delinquent on your taxes. If you don't pay this year's taxes, you now have a recorded lien. It will be found when you go to sell the property, and you will be required to pay your delinquent taxes. The only way that we can know about liens, mechanics liens, judgments, deeds of trust, mortgage, is to record them. And again, that's what we're getting ready to get into more in Unit 5, is talk about the attorney recording and the attorney finding the things that are recorded to make sure they're cleared up before title is passed to that new owner. Questions on this one? Mechanics lien. Why don't you guys tell me in the chat, the mechanics lien, in order for the mechanic to collect, the lien has to be filed within how many days of the of when the work was finished? How many days within the work was finished? And that's our 120 days. So the mechanic from when the work ended had 120 days to put their lien on file. If they don't file the lien, they lose their right to collect. They don't get to stand in line. Questions on this one?
I don't know that I understand that question. You said it's not required to be recorded in order to be valid. The ad of Valorem tax lien, that I thought that was just had to do with value of a property.
No, that's our real property taxes in North Carolina. That's our real property taxes. Today's what, January 11th? You have a tax lien on your property right now.
Okay.
Everybody does. In the state of North Carolina. We don't, that's right, it's automatic, right?
Okay.
January 1st, we all have a tax lien. If you pay it this year, it just kind of disappears. If you don't, on January 5th or 6th next year, then they're going to put a recorded lien on you. Then they're going to let the world know that you didn't pay last year's taxes. Right? Everybody owes taxes right now. That's why it's not recorded in order to be valid. We know it's January 11th and everybody in the state owes taxes. Does that make sense? What I need to know is if you don't pay. That's right. Somebody says it's automatic. That's right. Kahoot anxiety. No. This is supposed to be fun. This is a good way for me to gauge how we're doing if we need to have conversations about this, like for this. But again, hopefully you guys are gauging yourself too. If you got it wrong, that's okay. Just look it up. This is the time to learn. Fair enough? All right, so Kahoot does this very dramatic conclusion at the end. So if I hit the right button. So here's our podium. Our third place winner is Kate. Good job, Kate. She made a podium. Second place is Valen. I hope I'm saying that right. And our first place Kahooter this round is Christina. I think it tells, yeah, runners up. I can't see that. My Zoom bar's in the way. Okay, good. Thank you. Back in the day when we were in person, I'll reward you with candy bars. So now that we're not in person, my candy bar budget has drastically improved. So you know what, all of you, just for participating today, why don't you go out and buy yourself a candy bar this afternoon? And think of me when you get it. No, I'm just kidding. Kahoot's fun. So I had a question, the mechanics lien, 120 days versus 180. They have 120 days to file the lien from when the work ended. They have 180 days to enforce, which means they can foreclose, but they have to do it within 180 days. So that's back in unit 2. $120 days to file the lien, 180 days to enforce. Questions? We'll Kahoot after every, 2 or 3 units or so. We'll Kahoot. Good times. All right, moving right along. Unit 4 is our property description unit. Unit 4 tells us how we can describe the property, how we can define the property lines. And in this unit, we're going to talk about different legal descriptions. I got several different legal descriptions to help you define the property. We're going to discuss a survey. And then the end of unit 4 is some math, but I'm not doing math to you twice in one day. I'm not going to do it. So we're going to do the content of unit 4. We're going to do the math in unit 4 on Thursday. Okay, so we'll get through unit 4. We'll get started on unit 5 in just a minute. And then the first thing that we come back when we come together on Thursday is the math in unit 4. I try to only do one math to you per day. Fair enough? Okay. So unit 4, again, with our legal description, let's just first talk about what a legal description is. The legal description describes the land. It doesn't necessarily describe the improvement that's on the land. Think of it as like the tour of the property, the perimeters of the property. It tells you anything within these property lines, any improvements within these property lines is appurtenant, which means they're going to convey. The only legal description that counts is the one that's done by a surveyor. The survey will perform the legal description. We'll talk about the ways they can do that in just a second. They're the only ones that can identify the property lines. All buyers, when land is included, should be encouraged to have a survey done. Buyers deserve to know what they're buying. The seller, when they purchased, maybe they had a survey done, maybe they didn't. When they purchased, if they did have a survey done, maybe they're willing to share it with the buyer, maybe they're not. They don't have to, it's their survey. Even if the seller is willing to share that survey with the buyer is still encouraged to have their own done because things change. So anytime a buyer's buying property that includes land, they're encouraged to have, or should be encouraged to have a survey done, so they know exactly what they're buying. And there are 4 different ways to define the legal description. The first way to define the legal description is called the meets and bounds. This is the one that we use mostly in North Carolina. So with the meets and bounds, again, it's a tour of the parameter of the property. The surveyor starts and ends at the point of beginning. So they start at the point of beginning and they work their way around the property. They go, so far east and then turn, so far south and turn, west and turn, up and turn. They make turns until they get back to the point of beginning. They outline the lines of the property. And they use monuments to tell them when to turn. Sometimes monuments can be placed by nature. Sometimes the monuments can be trees or rocks. Do trees and rocks move sometimes? Yeah, trees fall down, rocks get rolled away. Sometimes monuments are man-made. Have you guys ever seen property where you got the stakes with the little pink flag on it? That's a telltale sign that a surveyor's been there. The surveyor used that stake with the little pink flag on it as their monument. Again, you guys, one thing that your buyers need to understand, even if the seller is providing their survey when they bought, monuments move. Like we said, sometimes rocks roll away. Sometimes kids get bored in the summertime and move stakes. So that's one reason why buyers, I had a builder once many years ago that said he'd purchased this huge tract of land. He had the surveyor come out to subdivide the property and play his stakes up. He said the surveyor there was like for a week, laying out the different lots that were going to be in this subdivision. That weekend, kids, or we're assuming kids, moved every single one of those stakes. Every single one of those stakes. We're assuming it's kids that did this. Pretty much set them back, didn't it? The surveyor, yes, would have taken pictures, but if you're just looking at flat land with no other mark, no other indication, might be kind of hard to tell where those stakes were. Meets and bounds are your calls and directions. Okay, meets is your meets and bounds. I'm trying to think. Meets is your meets is your call, bounds is your directions. So to look at a picture, you see the point of beginning at the top right. Nope, top left. My left from my right. And then we use these calls and directions, these meets and bounds, to go from the point of beginning to this monument, and then we turn. And then we go down, meets and bounds, calls and directions to this monument, and then we turn. And then calls and directions to this monument, and then we turn. We work our way back up to the point of beginning. Again, this is the primary method of describing land in North Carolina. If you guys look with me on page 73. You guys see about halfway down, just above the picture there, figure 4.1, says there's a paragraph, a tract of land located in blank, comma, blank. You guys see where I'm at? If you read that, that's surveyor speak. That's surveyor language. That's what the surveyor is using to identify the property. Page 43. No, 73, 73. Okay. So meets and bounds, primary method for describing land in North Carolina. Another way to describe land is out west, and it's referred to the rectangular survey system or the government survey system. The rectangular survey system uses a grid. Look at this picture. This doesn't look like our land here in North Carolina, does it? Our topography is different. Anybody ever flown to Vegas? I'm like the Garfield cat when I fly. I love flying, and I'm the one that's like on the window the whole time. If you ever flown out west, once you get over mountain range, once you get past the Mississippi, this is how the lay of the land tends to look. And one way they can define property is by using the grid system, the rectangular survey system. So it's a grid system. They use intersecting lines. North-south lines are our meridians. East-west lines are our baselines. The grid system uses townships and sections. So if you guys will please turn with me to page 76. Figure 4.5 is one township. The grid system, north-south lines, east-west lines. Townships contain 36 sections, as you can see on page 76. Each section contains 640 acres. So section 1 has 640 acres, section 27 has 640 acres. And that's how the grid is defined. That's how we know how big to make that grid. They say when you're looking at sections in a township to look at them like you're plowing a field. I myself have never plowed a field, but if you look at it, it makes sense. Section 1 is the top right. So you go right to left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you come down, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then you come down again, 13, 14, and so on. It's like you're plowing a field, back and forth, back and forth. What you're looking at in figure 4.6, if we were to take section 16 and blow it up, and that's what you're looking at in figure 4.6. We took section 16 from 4.5 and we blew it up so we can see the different parcels, see the different ownership, property lines. One number that you need to know for your test, you need to know for real life. You will encounter it every single day in your career, I promise you. Every acre has 43,560 square feet. This is the math that we're going to do on Thursday. We're going to play with this number. For right now, get this number memorized. 43,560 square feet. How many square feet are in every single acre? 43,560. The math we're going to do is converting acres to square feet to acres. You want to impress your buyers? Have them ask you, well, I see this is so many square feet, but how many acres is that? You whip your calculator out, beep, boop, boop. You say, how many acres? And they say, wow, my agent really knows what they're doing. I use this every single day. So again, this is the math, 43,560. Between now and Thursday morning, memorize this number, put it on a flashcard. I've heard people, probably my favorite way to memorize this number, 4 little old ladies driving 35 and a 60. 4 little old ladies driving 35 and a 60. We've all been behind them before. I don't care how you memorize this number. If 4 little old ladies driving 35 and a 60 helps you, if putting on a flashcard helps you, I'm telling you, you'll need this number for your tests and for real life. Again, this is part of the math that we'll do on Thursday. So we've talked about meets and bounds. We've talked about the rectangular government survey system, the grid system. Another way to define property is to refer to a recorded plat map. Recorded plat maps we generally see with subdivisions. You may hear the recorded plat map referred to as the lot and block. There's an example of a plat map on page 78. You see this is a subdivision with a cul-de-sac. Lot 1 is the top left. You can see the dimensions. 2, 3, 4. You guys see easements for public utilities. Tells us where our easements are. Come around the cul-de-sac, lots 4 and 5. And then lots 6, 7, and 8 back out to the road. This is our plat map. So if the property is in a subdivision, you're not going to find this in downtown Winston-Salem, for example. Downtown Winston-Salem wasn't built like this. So you're going to be outside of downtown. And if it's a recorded subdivision, there's going to be a recorded plat map. For the most part in North Carolina, if it's available, we can rely on the recorded plat map. But if there's any question about the lines, then we have a surveyor come in and do meets and bounds. The last way to describe property lines, property boundaries, is using a previously recorded deed. Previous recorded deeds should have legal descriptions. Again, things change depending on how old that deed is. It may not be accurate. We don't use this much anymore just because of the accuracy. It's always best that the buyer have a new survey done. And guys, I'm going to be honest, at some point in our history, we got really lazy. And on the deed, instead of giving the legal description, we just said, see previously recorded deed. So now you got to do the research, go back to the tax record, the register of deeds, find the previously recorded deed, and guess what it says? See previously recorded deed. So I think we're done being lazy. I think now we're actually using the legal description. But again, things change, monuments change. So reference to recorded deed is seldomly used today. North Carolina, meets and bounds, number 1. Reference to a recorded plat map, if available, number 2. Questions on how we define property, how the surveyor defines property lines. Remember, I'm not a surveyor. So unless you're a surveyor, I can't tell you where your lines are. What can I do? I can suggest you have a surveyor tell you. Remember, you guys, you've got to stay in your lane. Okay. Good. On page 79, your book talks about an informal reference. The street address is an informal reference. The street address does not give you the accurate property description. In addition to the street address, you need as much of the legal description as you can. This helps us, everybody involved, buyer, seller, agents, attorney, lender, everybody involved know that we're all talking about the same parcel of land. But it's, guys, there's been lawsuits. The buyer thinks they're buying land, the seller misrepresented their land, and now they're not buying that land, and the seller can't sell it because it's not their land to sell. Blah. So the legal description helps us identify exactly what parcel of land that we're gonna convey. A question came in: if you are getting a loan, does the bank require a survey? Sometimes the lender may require a survey if there's a question about a flood hazard. For example, we'll talk about flood hazards. But the bank doesn't always require it. Most of the time, it's up to the buyer to have a survey done when they're purchasing. When you're conveying property, street address alone is not sufficient. So for example, the sales contract, the offer to purchase and contract, we're conveying property. And when you're conveying property, the street address alone is not sufficient, which means in addition to the street address, you need the legal description. As much of the legal description as we can, we will see in Unit 10 when we look at our offer to purchase and contract. The listing agreement is not conveying property. A lease is not conveying property. So if you're not conveying property, street address is usually sufficient. When in doubt, add more of the legal description. So let's talk about this survey and the importance of the survey. As we said, the survey is done by a licensed surveyor. Is anybody a surveyor? I've yet to have one in pre-licensing. Keep your hand up for a second if it's up so I can go to page 2. No, yeah, I've yet to have one. The broker can never offer their opinion about parcel boundaries, easements. Any of those questions should be referred to a surveyor. Again, you guys, you got to stay in your lane. I'm not a surveyor. I'm just a real estate agent. Some things, as we kind of saw on page 78, just for an example, what can we find on a survey? Well, we can find the boundaries. That's the most important thing. Where easements are, we talked about your utility easements. So the survey will tell us where those are located. Are we in a flood zone? If we're in a flood zone, then flood insurance will be required. We're going to talk about insurance. I got a whole unit dedicated to insurance. So unit 13 is our insurance unit. The survey will tell us how many square feet and or acres are on the property. It'll identify encroachments. We talked about encroachments at the end of unit 3. Remember when we were in unit 3 and we said, for example, we were talking about the fence. And we said the only thing you know by looking at a fence is that somebody put a fence there. The fence in no way gives us any sort of indication about whether or not it's in or on or near the property lines. And guys, I'm telling you, you're out showing property. You and your buyers walk outside of the backyard. You have this conversation with your buyers about getting a survey done. And they say, Julie, I don't need a survey done. Julie, do you see that fence right there? That's going to be my property line where they put the fence up. No. The only thing you know by looking at a fence is that somebody put a fence there. You know what I had a buyer tell me once? They didn't need a survey because they could see the mow line. They could see where they mowed their yard. Come on, y'all. You can have a 14-year-old mow your yard, right? Does that 14-year-old know where your property line is? Probably not. How do buyers know for sure where their property lines are? they have a survey done. My husband and I just bought this house 2020, I guess 2 years ago now. And we had a survey done because I'm a really good agent. And I said that we had to do it. So we had a survey done. But one of the big reasons I wanted to have a survey done is because I have a shed on my property. And the shed looked very close to what I thought could be the neighbor's property. So we were going to have a survey done anyway, of course. But I wanted to know exactly where that shed was, make sure we didn't have a problem. So we had a survey come back. The back right corner of my shed is in my property lines by a whopping foot. But you know what? It's in. It's in. And I have a survey proving that. So if my neighbor ever comes knocking on my door and says, your shed's on my property, I'm in, I got a whole foot to spare. It's close, but it's in. And now I know that for sure. Can a fence be on the property line? Of course it can. Does that make it right? No. So the only thing you can tell by looking at a fence is that somebody put a fence there. We'll talk more about fences and sheds when we get into unit 6, talk about our restrictive covenants or HOAs. Title insurance issues. And we're going to talk about title insurance in unit 5. Title insurance protects the new owner from errors of the past. So anything that the former owners put on the title, if it comes up later, the new owner has title insurance. The current owner has title insurance. And if when that person was buying, they chose not to have a survey done, and for example, we find out after closing that maybe there's an encroachment on the property, title insurance may not protect the current owner. Title insurance may say, if you would have had a survey done before closing, we would have found this encroachment and we would have taken care of it. But you didn't, you chose not to do that. So I'm not going to protect you. I'm not going to help you. So again, conversations we have with our buyers, make sure they understand the importance of having a survey done. Obviously, you guys will learn a lot more about that once you get out in the field and you start working more with buyers. And we'll talk about title insurance in unit 5. Questions? That's all I have for unit 4. Short, sweet, and to the point, right? The only other thing left in unit 4 is the math. We'll do the math on Thursday. So you have that to look forward to. Questions on what we've talked about in unit 4. Are surveyors strictly using subdivision plat maps? No, they're doing meets and bounds. Plat map only if available. Not everything has a plat map. And if there's any question about what's on the plat map, the surveyor will do. Surveyors do a lot. They don't just measure property. Have you guys ever been driving down the road and see a guy on the corner in like an orange vest with a tripod, like taking pictures of the intersection? You guys know that's a surveyor. He's surveying that intersection. Maybe we need to put a light in here. Maybe we need to put a roundabout, right? He's surveying. Do you guys ever wave? I do. Hey, you know, maybe that'll brighten his day. I don't know. But that's a surveyor. He's studying that intersection. He's studying that land to see if we need to make any improvements to that intersection.
Hey, Julie. Yeah. I know this might not sound like a good question, but I don't know. But why don't as brokers, and we are going to be the ones selling the homes, right? So why don't we know about where the land ends if we're doing a selling? Why is it up to the survey, or are we supposed to tell everyone to go see a survey? How come we don't know and we're the ones who are showing the home?
Sure. And that guys, there are no bad questions, right? So as the listing agent, I'm working with the owner to help them sell their house, right? What if that owner didn't have a survey done when they bought? So now I have nothing to go on. We talked about monuments moving. What if the monument was that tree and now that tree's fallen down and was removed? So that's why, because things change. I mean, think about it. The current owner could have bought 3 years ago. Maybe they bought 30 years ago. So things change. And in order for our buyer to have protection under their title insurance policy, their new title insurance policy is going to want to see a current survey. They're going to want to see that current information because things just change. What if you're using a pond and that pond dried up from when that survey was done 30 years ago, right? So just because things change, like I said, sometimes sellers are willing to share their survey with the buyer. They don't have to. It's their property. It's up to them. I think that's kind of more rare, actually, because the seller says, I paid for this. I'm not going to give this to somebody else. Are surveys expensive? So, you know, it depends, right, on how much land you're surveying and where you are. I'm going to say on average, please hear me say on average, a quarter of an acre, you're probably starting at about $400 or $500 to have it surveyed. If you're having 10 acres surveyed, it's going to be a lot more expensive. Question comes in, if the plat map is available, should the survey still be done? You don't have to do the meets and bounds if the plat map's available, unless there are any questions from the plat map. Is that the expense of the broker? No, no, the buyer gets to pay for that. Not my survey. I'm not paying for it. Okay, somebody had an acre survey. It cost them $600. It depends on the size. Again, the size of the land. Is it a quarter acre? Is it 10 acres? When we get into units 9 and 10, we're going to talk about our contract. We're going to talk about, you know, there's things that the buyers are encouraged to do before they actually buy. We want the buyers to learn as much about the properties they possibly can before they buy. And one way they can learn about the property is to have a survey done. Okay. All right. So we, again, are ending unit 4 here. We'll get the math on Thursday. That's the first thing we'll do is get the math. So let's go ahead and take our break. And when we come back, we're going to get started on unit 5. All right. Back for the last hour. So we're done with unit 4 for today. Okay, we'll come back together on Thursday. We're going to go back and grab the math. And then we'll pick up, I'm not going to get through unit 5 today, so we'll pick up wherever we leave off. Who creates Learn, Test, Pass? We purchased it from another school down in, I think they were right in the Durham area. I think so. All right. Cameras on for attendance and after. By the way, you can't turn your camera on and smile and then turn it off for the rest of the class. Cameras have to be on at all times. So I am taking attendance. And we are going to fast forward into time and start talking about unit 5. Unit 5 is our attorney unit. Unit 5 is when we're going to talk about transfer of title. We're going to talk about deeds. We're going to talk about title insurance. We're going to talk about the things that the attorney does, kind of what their part is in the transaction and how they can assist that buyer. So in unit 5, we're going to identify the different methods of transferring title. We're going to talk about the elements of a deed. There are essential and non-essential elements that create a valid deed. And we have different types of deeds. It'd be way too boring to only have one kind of deed, right? So we're going to talk about the different types of deeds. If you just came back, I've already taken attendance, please let me know. We're going to explain again the attorney's process, the recordation process, the title examination process, what the attorney does in the transaction. There is a little bit of math in unit 5, but it's very small. We'll get through that pretty quickly. And again, we won't see that until Thursday. Okay. So, unit 5. First off, let's talk about title. No, you know what? No. Before I do that, I'm going to go back because I want you guys to listen. I want you to try to write down every single word. Let's all look in the book on page 86. Let's look at page 86 real quick. You guys see at the bottom of page 86, we have figure 5.1. And 5.1 tells us the type of document, the giver of the document, and the receiver of the document. I want you guys over giver. Everybody see in figure 5.1 where it says giver? I want you to write a big O-R. O-R. The giver of the document is the person given the document. So for example, the grantor is the seller. They are the person given the document. The offeror is the person giving the offer. You guys see what I'm saying? The giver is the or. You'll never hear me say giver again. Going forward, you're going to hear me say give or. Over receiver, I want you guys to write a big EE. They are the receivee of the document. So who's receiving the deed? The grantee. Who's receiving the offer? The offeree. So we have a big OR over giver and a big EE over receivee. You'll probably never hear me say giver and receiver again. Okay, so right now we're looking at the deed. In unit 5, we're going to look at the deed. We'll look at our offer and counter offer, installment, land, mortgage, lease. We'll look at all those as we go. So we may refer back to this figure just so we all make sure we're on the same page, give or and receivee. So you might want to dog ear this page. Dog ear page 86, because we know we're going to refer back to this figure. Make sure we all know who we're talking about. Okay. So again, we're just focusing on the deed in this unit. So with that being said, we start this unit by defining title. And the title is the right to ownership of the land. The deed is the documentary evidence. Title is the idea. The deed is the proof. The deed is something tangible that you can touch. So title is the idea. Deed is the proof. And we talk about transfer of title. It's the idea of the change of ownership. How do you prove that you've changed ownership? We have a deed. We have something tangible that we can touch. One word you may see in this unit is alienation. If you're alienating yourself from your title, you're separating yourself from the title. You're alienating yourself from the title. You're conveying the property. You're separating yourself from it, and you're conveying it to somebody else. So we have a couple different methods for transferring title. We have a couple different methods for you to separate yourself, alienate yourself from your title. And the first way that you can separate yourself is voluntarily. And you do so by sale or gift. We use a deed to either sell the property or gift the property. If you're voluntarily separating yourself, voluntarily alienating yourself, you're doing it on your own free will. You choose to sell it. You choose to gift it. And you do so by using a deed. So what we're going to do now is talk about deed. We're going to define this deed. And the top of page 87, y'all don't have to write this down. This is all at the top of page 87. There are essential elements that create a valid deed. What do I mean by a valid deed? Let's break this down real quick. What do I mean by a valid deed? If something is valid, it'll stand up in a court of law. The judge will look at it and say, well, this satisfies everything that we need to know for a deed. What is the judge going to look at to satisfy? These are these essential elements. Okay. I always think when we talk about essential elements of, in this case, a valid deed, I always think of essential elements as cake ingredients. Don't you have to have certain ingredients to make cake? Don't you have to have oil and egg and water, right? And if you don't have those essential ingredients, then you don't have cake, right? If you don't put flour in it, you probably just have goo. So how do you have cake? You have these required elements. And think about the valid deed is the same way. In order for a judge to declare a valid deed, we have to have these essential elements, these essential ingredients, if you will. So what are these essential ingredients? Well, the deed has to be in writing. Remember, we said the title is the idea, the deed is the proof, the tangible. So we have a piece of paper that we can touch. We have it in writing. A valid deed has to have legal capacity of the grantor. Who's the grantor? The giver of the deed, the seller, the person giving their deed. The valid deed has to name both parties, both the grantor and the grantee. Seller is giving their deed to buyer. Both parties are named. A valid deed has to have words of conveyance. It has to state the grantor's intention to convey the property. So you're going to have verbiage very similar to I, grantor, do hereby give my property to grantee. We have words of conveyance. A valid deed is going to have an accurate legal description. See Unit 4 on how to get that legal description, either be meets and bounds or record a plat map in North Carolina. The grantor signs the deed. The grantee does not. There's only one party that signs the deed to convey it. Who is it? It's the seller. It's the person giving the deed. Welcome back. And then the deed has to be accepted by the grantee, the person receiving it, in this case, the buyer. The grantee has to accept it voluntarily. Another thing not on this list, it is in your book on page 87. Another thing that's required in some form is some form of consideration. Consideration is just something of value. Usually in consideration, it's the purchase price. What did the buyer give the seller in exchange for their title, in exchange for their deed? But very rarely is the purchase price mentioned in the deed. So there's going to be some form of consideration, but very rarely you're going to see the actual purchase price. Question came in, do you have to memorize this for your test? If we're talking about it, it's on the syllabus. If it's on the syllabus, it's a good candidate for the state exam. Flashcards. So if these are the essential elements that are required ingredients for a valid deed, again, think back to your cake ingredients. These are the required ingredients for a deed. If you will, flip with me over to page 88. And on page 88, we have elements that are not required. They're often present, but they're not required. The judge is not looking for these when they're determining if the deed is valid. Think of these things on page 88. Think of these as like the nuts and the sprinkles and the whipped cream, right? Whatever you like, ice cream, whatever you like to put on your cake. Can you have cake without sprinkles? Sure. Is it better with sprinkles? Well, if you're a fan of sprinkles, then yes. You guys with me? So they're not required, but they add to it. They help. Extras, that's right. And we see them quite frequently. That's what I want. But again, we're defining a valid deed. What are the things that are that the judge is looking for? So in addition to the essential elements, a deed may or may not be witnessed. The signature of the grantor may or may not be witnessed. Deeds are generally dated, but a date is not required for a valid deed. As we said earlier, deeds are going to have some form of consideration, although they may not list the exact amount. Deeds, maybe they're notarized. Maybe the grantor's signature is notarized, not required. It just helps. The definition of a valid deed per the courts says that deeds don't have to be recorded to be valid. Everybody put a big star next to that. That's the problem topic all day long. The definition of a valid deed says that a deed is perfectly valid if it's not recorded. In North Carolina, we have something called the Connor Act. The Connor Act is what requires deeds to be recorded. It's not the definition of a valid deed that requires it to be recorded. It's Connor. We'll talk more about Connor Act later in this unit. Your test is going to ask you about the essential elements of a valid deed. So under the essential elements of a valid deed, does the deed have to be recorded in order to be valid? Everybody shake your head no. It's the extras. It's the sprinkles. It's the Connor Act that steps in and takes that a step further. Do we record? Absolutely. Why? Because Connor tells us to. Everybody good with that? Star it, circle it. I'm telling you that is a problem topic. We'll talk more about Connor. Probably won't see him much more today.
I have one question.
Yes.
I know we've been talking about things being recorded since like the last couple of units. That means that you're going to like a register of deeds or something and putting documentation, right?
That's exactly what you're doing. Yep.
Okay.
And we're going to talk more about that. Yep. Further in this unit. So we'll actually officially get to it.
Okay.
Okay. The last thing there in North Carolina, deeds don't have to be sealed in order to be valid. If you put a seal on something, you got like that that stamp that kind of embosses the paper and part of the paper is raised. You know what I'm talking about? So you might have like the North Carolina seal, or you might have a county seal. Again, not required for a valid deed. It's the extras. It's the ice cream and the sprinkles and the cherry on top. It's important that we understand the essential elements of a valid deed, what the judge is going to look at if they're trying to declare a deed valid versus the extras. It helps when you have something you can relate it to, right? We'll talk more about Connor later in this unit. Everybody good with that? Everybody have that on page 88 marked? Terminator, whatever it takes. Hey, if that's what helps. Fantastic. All right, so this is essential elements of a valid deed, and then the extras on page 88. Now what we need to do is talk about it. We have different types of deeds. There's not just one deed. That would be way too boring. We have several different types of deeds. So at the top of page 89, we first talking about the general warranty deed. You may also hear the general warranty deed being referred to as a full covenant warranty deed, or just a warranty deed. I think we mentioned in real estate, we like several names for the same thing. Keep us on our toes. The general warranty deed is the best deed for the grantee. Who's the grantee? The receivee of the deed. Who's receiving the deed? The buyer. So the general warranty deed is best for the grantee. Why? Because it gives the grantor the greatest degree of liability. It offers the most protection for the grantee. How does it offer protection for the grantee? Because the grantor provides certain warranties, certain covenants, promises, if you will. And the 5 covenants that the grantor promises the grantee in a general warranty deed, you have covenant of cessation and the right to convey. The grantor warrants that they are the legal owner of the property and they have the right to convey it. It's theirs to give. The grantor provides a warranty or covenant against encumbrances. What's an encumbrance? Everything we talked about in Unit 3. If there's any liens on the property, the grantor is going to pay those off before they convey. If there's any easements, they're either going to convey them or they're going to take care of them. Covenant of quiet enjoyment. The grantor promises the grantee that their new title is going to be good against third parties. The grantor promises the grantee that after settlement, nobody can show up and try to lay claim to the property. The grantor warrants to the grantee covenant of further assurance. The grantor promises, look, if something does come up later after settlement that affects this title, I'll come back and take care of it. I promise to obtain and deliver any instruments going forward that could affect your new deed. And then the covenant of warranty forever. Again, the grantor is telling the grantee, again, I promise, if at any time in the future this title fails, this deed fails, I'll come back and make it right. So what if the grantor lies? What if they sign something and say, oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with this title? That's why the new owner has title insurance. Title insurance is heirs of the past. It covers the current owner for heirs of the past. Again, we'll talk about title insurance. But if title insurance ever has to get involved, if something comes up on the title that happened before the current owner owned the property, title insurance is going to go after the grantor first. Because the grantor is the one that said, this can't happen. I gave you this general warranty deed. I promised you that this wouldn't happen. So now that we're here, title insurance is going to go after them first. What if? What if they're dead? What if they're broke? What if they're out in Aruba somewhere? That's where title insurance will kick in and take care of it for the current owner. Title insurance protects the current owner from heirs of the past. Here's the thing about general warranty deeds. General warranty deed does not just protect the new owner from heirs of this grantor's past. General warranty deed protects the new owner from heirs of all of the past. Anything that happened to the title during the time I owned it, the owner before me, the owner before me, the owner before me. It's not just limited during the time that the grantor owned the property. It goes back to the beginning of time. Getting a couple questions about title insurance. Hang on to those questions in just a minute, and when we talk about it, we'll probably answer. So hang on to title insurance questions for just, if not today, then Thursday. Let's just focus on general warranty deed right now. Any questions so far on the general warranty deed? General warranty deed, best for the grantee because it gives the grantor the most liability. Why is there liability for the grantor? Because they're making these promises, they're making these covenants. Another type of deed that we have is called a special warranty deed. The special warranty deed is a limited warranty deed. And it's limited in that one, there's only two covenants, two warranties. The grantor is promising that they receive title. I got this at some point. And the grantor is promising, while I had this title, there were no encumbrances put on it. I'm not going back to the beginning of time. I'm just giving you two warranties for the time that I owned it. That's why it's limited. There's only two warranties, and it only warrants the title during the time I owned it. I have no idea what happened before me, nor am I going to warrant it. In North Carolina, we tend to associate special warranty deeds with foreclosures. Again, we're talking about foreclosures in our financing units, which are units 14 and 15. So special warranty, it's limited. It's limited to the number of covenants given, just two, and it's limited to the time. Only during the time I owned it. Another type of deed that we have, we don't see this much in North Carolina, but other states may use something called a bargain and sale deed. I always think of the bargain and sale bin in the back of the store. I'm going to talk about a quitclaim deed next. The difference between a bargain and sale deed and a quitclaim deed, which we're talking about next, is there's no express warranty with a bargain and sale deed. When something's express, the terms have been clearly stated. So there is no express warranty. The terms were not clearly stated. Maybe that's in oral, maybe that's in writing. But if something's express, the terms were not clearly stated. So you have an implied warranty with a bargain and sale deed. Generally, what we see in North Carolina is a quitclaim deed. The quitclaim deed is a non-warranty deed. How many warranties are provided with a quitclaim deed? None. No promises, no nothing. Basically, what the quitclaim deed says is, what I got, you get. So if I got nothing, what do you get? Absolutely nothing. I have nothing to give. There are no covenants, there are no warranties. Usually we see a quitclaim deed to cure a cloud on title. What do I mean by that? Maybe somebody's name is misspelled. Maybe the address is wrong. Maybe we'll use a quitclaim deed to settle a divorce, for example. Not necessarily ownership passing title. Quitclaim deeds can also be used to create an easement. We're not necessarily conveying title. There are no covenants or warranties. Again, primarily used to cure a cloud on title. So maybe somebody's name was misspelled. That's right, Matt. Please don't buy houses off of Craigslist. Please. On page 90 in your book, there's an in practice. I always want you guys paying attention to in practice. In practice is a real life application, right? I think for examples. So the in practice on page 90 is just reminding me I'm not an attorney. Can I prepare a deed for anybody? No. But Julie, I attended pre-licensing and I got all those questions right. Can I prepare a deed for somebody? No. If you want to prepare deeds, go to law school. It's pretty simple. As real estate agents, we're not preparing deeds. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm not telling buyers what deed they should get, telling sellers what deed they should give. This is why I call Unit 5 our attorney unit. The last little piece of this section is North Carolina special purpose deeds. You got a whole list on page 90 and 91. I just pulled a few out. You may want to make a note to look at them all just to have an idea. A correction deed is if you're fixing a previous error. Again, a wrong address, misspelled name. What do you use, a correction deed or a quitclaim deed? Well, it depends. A lot of times it might just depend on the mood of the judge. So correction deed, you're fixing a mistake. Can also use a quitclaim deed. Remember back in Unit 2, we talked about trusts. And if you have a trust, you have a trustee involved. So if the trustee is conveying property, they would have a trustee's deed. A sheriff's deed is when the courts take the property. If for some reason the judge takes the property, the judge isn't going to go knock on the door and take the property, are they? Who are they going to send to do it? They're going to send somebody from the sheriff's department. So a sheriff's deed is used if the judge is taking the property. And then the deed of gift is if you're giving your property. Say you want to give your property to your family member, we would use a deed of gift. Deed of release at the top of page 91. Once you've paid off your mortgage, isn't that what we get up and go to work for every day? You get a deed of release. That's releasing you from the lender, for example. Looking forward to that one. Can I share? I'm so excited. We paid off my little condo at the end of last year. I am currently waiting for my deed of release to come in the mail. They said 30 to 45 business days. I'm pretty sure it's never going to get here. It's only been like 11, you know, but yeah, I am currently waiting on my deed of release. I no longer owe anything to the lender. That's exciting. Look forward to that. Get up and go to work every day for it. It's a good feeling once you finally get it. Yeah, I got to go to the bank and do a wire transfer. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you. It's exciting. Live for that day. The dream. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So questions on deeds. Remember, if you're conveying property voluntarily, voluntary alienation, you're doing so with a deed. You're transferring it with a deed. So if you can alienate yourself voluntarily, that means you can also do so involuntarily. And with involuntary alienation, it's usually by operation of law. It's carried out by the courts. It's involuntary. You didn't want to sell it, but it happened anyway because the courts ruled it. If you guys will, figure 5.2 on page 92. If you like pictures and charts, we're getting ready to talk about this, but figure 5.2 on page 92 gives us a nice little summary of what we're getting ready to talk about, involuntary alienation. And the first method in which we can involuntary alienation, voluntary separate ourselves from property is called escheat. Escheat is what happens when somebody dies without a will or heirs. When an individual owns property and they don't have a will or heirs, the state will take the property and determine what to do with it. So escheat is the process in which the state takes the property when somebody dies, no will, no heirs. We'll talk in just a bit about what happens if somebody dies without a will, but they do have heirs. So for right now, let's just understand escheat says no will, no heirs. Okay. Another way you could lose your property, involuntary alienation, is eminent domain. I think somebody asked me about this earlier. I said we might get to it. So here we are. Eminent domain is the right that the government has to take your land for public good. If the government decides that some or all of your land can be used for public good, they can take your property for eminent domain. Again, maybe they take the whole property, maybe they just take a portion of it. I think a common example of eminent domain is if they want to do a road widening project. That's right. They want to do a road widening project out front, and they come in and they take 5 feet of your road so they can put in a turn lane. They're not taking your whole property. They're just taking what they need to expand the road. My Kernersville people, where are my Kernersville people? You got that belt loop. How long have they been talking about that dang belt loop? How much property did they take to build that belt loop? A question came in, what about a school? If the government decides to take your private land for the public good for a school, this tends to be what people don't like about eminent domain. If the government wants to take your property, they're going to. They do provide you compensation. They just don't take it and leave you high and dry. I'm getting there. They will offer you just compensation. They will compensate you for the value of the land that they take. Who determines that value? Well, they're probably going to have an appraiser and assessor come out. So if they're taking the 5 feet in front of your road, they'll compensate you for that 5 feet. They're not going to pay you for your whole property. They're going to pay you for that 5 feet or whatever they take. The reason I have just compensation in quotation marks is while they are paying you for the value of taking that strip of land or that piece of your property, they may not always think about compensation, how this could affect the property in the future. So for example, if they take the first 5 feet of road frontage to widen the highway, what you won't get compensated for is the fact that now your house is 5 feet closer to a busier highway. So you could lose value just in that. Does that make sense? You could just lose value. People may not perceive that as good because now your house is 5 feet closer to the road. That's what we mean by just compensation. I've heard of some people fighting these. I've heard of some people saying, just take the first thing that they offer you. If you ever get the letter for eminent domain, what am I going to tell you to do? Call an attorney. See what kind of rights you have. I'm not sure about the salvage building. I'm not sure where that was. But what's the big picture of eminent domain? If the government justifies taking your property for public good, and if the property's leased, then that will terminate the lease. Now we'll give the tenant time to find somewhere else to go. It's not like the government's just going to show up and say, you're a tenant, I'm taking the property, get out. I got a whole unit to the tenant. We're going to talk about the tenant landlord relationship in unit 11. Somebody said somebody tried to fight it and they didn't win. I've heard a couple people say, yeah, I got the letter. I said, that's not enough. I hired an attorney and I got more money. Most of the time what I hear is, I got the letter, I tried to fight it, and I lost. Guys, this is you versus the government. Get you a good attorney. You wrote down, get an attorney. Get a good attorney if that's the route you want to go. But generally, they send you that letter saying we're taking your property for eminent domain. That's it. Consider it done. Yeah, thank you. I was trying to think of how to end that. It's a done deal. All right. That's right, Cassandra. That's exactly right. Everybody have that in their head now? If not, go find it on YouTube after class. After class, don't find it now. All right, so involuntarily losing your property is escheat, eminent domain. You could lose your property by lien foreclosure. Typically, foreclosures come from your lender, wherever your loan is, your mortgage. Failure to make the mortgage payment, the lender's going to foreclose on you so they can collect, so they can try to satisfy all their debts. We're going to talk about foreclosure in units 14 and 15. So right now, that's all we're going to say about this. And then the last way you can involuntarily lose your property is something called adverse possession. You guys remember back in unit 3, we talked about easement by prescription. And easement by prescription, you said if somebody claims that they've been using your property for 20 years, they can get an easement by prescription. Easements are just use. Adverse possession takes easement by prescription one step further. Adverse possession says, now I'm not claiming use of your land. Now I'm going to claim your land. Adverse possession means that somebody has the right to go to the court and say, I have been using this property for X amount of time. I'll talk about time in just a second. And nobody has stopped me. So because I've been using it for X amount of time, I want title. I want legal ownership of the property. Adverse possession. Is that not wild? Mind blown that somebody, so that fence that's been on your property for 20 years, that corner of the fence that you've ignored for the last 20 years, you could lose that corner of your property to adverse possession. What about an abandoned property? Let's say you buy property and then you abandon it and you move to Texas. You pay the taxes every year, so nobody's bothering you. In the meantime, somebody moves on your property, and after a certain amount of time, they can say, you know what? I've been living here. Nobody stopped me. Judge, give me the property. And the judge, per adverse possession, may say, okay. Legal justification, the judge is going to say, because you've been using it anyway. So with adverse possession, this period of time is called color of title. Color of title is some kind of faulty document, some kind of faulty reason to believe that the property is yours. Maybe you've been using it. Maybe you think you inherited the property. You have some reason to think that the property is yours. That color of title is what gives you the right to go stand in front of the judge and say, I'm using this property. If you don't have faulty documentation, then you have to wait 20 years before you can claim adverse possession. If you do have faulty documentation, faulty reason to think that it's your property, you can go to the judge and claim adverse possession within 7 years. When the claimant goes to the judge to claim adverse possession, the judge is going to study ocean. In order to give the property, the judge is going to study ocean. The judge is going to ask, was your use of the property open? Was it well known to others? Or were you hiding the fact that you were using the property? Y'all, it's hard to hide a fence, right? What if you move your trailer onto the property? It's hard to hide a trailer. The judge is going to ask the claimant if their use was continuous. Has it been interrupted for the last 7 years or 20 years? The judge is going to ask if it's exclusive. Exclusive meaning there's only one claimant. Only one person can claim adverse possession. The judge is going to ask if it was adverse, which means the claimant has to intend to claim the property. This doesn't just happen automatically. How does one get adverse possession? They go to a judge and claim the property. And then the judge is going to determine if the use was notorious. Is it well known with others without permission of the owner? What's the best way that you can prevent somebody from claiming adverse possession on your property? Give them permission. And that way, when the judge looks at him and says, was this notorious? Did you claim this property? Were you using this property without permission? They can't say no. We'll work other ways to get this person off your property. But if you give them permission, at least they can't claim adverse possession and take your property. So if the judge determines ocean, you may lose your property. So somebody asked about squat. I'm going back to my chat now. So if somebody, I was fortunate one time to have a police officer in my pre-licensing class. And as he explained to us, getting somebody off your property isn't as easy as one may think. So squatters, usually some kind of legal battle. We'll actually talk about how to get squatters off when we talk about landlords and tenants in Unit 11. But again, if you give them permission, then they can't claim notorious. In order to have adverse possession, we have to have ocean. So if we don't have all of this, then we don't have adverse possession. Is everybody with me? And these are the questions that the judge is going to ask to make sure that we do have. What if the heirs pass away? So remember we said escheat. If you lose your property escheat, you don't have wills, you don't have heirs, the state's going to take it. So adverse possession, I probably won't have it. The state will be sure to that. So here we go. Somebody has a situation. Looks like the neighbors Ask them to stop using your grass to get to the back side of their yard. It doesn't bother us, but you were nervous. That's right. But you gave them permission to use the back part of your yard to get right. So you gave them permission so they can't come back and claim adverse possession. How you get them to start using the back part of your property, you know, that could be a whole different legal battle, but at least they can't take your property. Everybody understand that's what we're saying with adverse possession. And I know this is a hard term because the idea that somebody can take your property is just like, wow. It pays to pay attention to property, right? Again, think of abandoned property. Think about that fence that you've ignored for 20 years. Easement by prescription is an easement. So an easement is had to sneeze. An easement is permission to be there. Adverse possession is taking the property. Does the permission need to be in writing or an oral? I would put it in writing so it would stand up in a court of law. A handshake's not going to get you far, right? So yeah, I would have it documented that we had this conversation. Is that crazy to you guys that this is the thing? Keep a track of your property. Know what's going on your property. Even if you abandon it and you move to Texas, come to North Carolina every once in a while and put your eye on it. Make sure nobody's moved their trailer on, and in 20 years, they're going to claim adverse possession. Yeah, Stephanie?
So if a family has a farm that has been abandoned, I don't know how to define the abandonment, but I know that the taxes has been paid on it, but it's still abandonment. It's not being taken care of. And someone outside of that family has been taking care of that farm since it's joint heirs actually, but the person that actually started it was an older person, this person's grandfather, and it's only one heir, one sibling that's still living. None of them are in the same state, meaning nobody comes from up north to down south to tend to this land or this farm.
And somebody else is doing it?
Yes.
Somebody else's, so they may be able to claim adverse possession. I'm an agent, so I can't tell you that they can or cannot, right? What's the best thing I can tell you to do?
Seek a lawyer.
Call your attorney. That's right. That's right. And we're getting ready to look at an example very similar to what you're saying there, Stephanie. So hang on to that. Somebody said, would you have to pay for it? Adverse possession? Well, that's up to the judge, whatever the judge rules. There could be people out there doing adverse possession for a living. That could be waiting. Now they got to wait 20 years, right? But I mean, sure, if you can find an abandoned piece of property, sure. Question comes up, how about the neighbor decides to make their own, decides on their own to put part of their land on their driveway? Do you give them permission or no? Again, at least if you give them permission to put their driveway there, they can't come back and take your property. Now, again, you got a different battle on your hand to get them and your driveway off, right? But at least they can't claim it as their own because put your driveway there. I'm going to fight you later to get it off, but at least you gave them that permission. And that's one thing that the judge is looking for. Did you give them permission to be there? If not, you could have an encroachment. You could have an easement, right? You could do other options. But they can't claim adverse possession. Everybody good with that? Somebody claims adverse possession by claiming ocean, by having ocean. And again, it blew my mind. I had this cop in my class a couple of years ago, and he said, guys, it's not as easy getting somebody off of your land as what you think. It's a process. And this is why we get attorneys involved. This is why the judge gets involved. Your book mentions an action to quiet title. That's just the lawsuit to resolve any title disputes. So if there is any title disputes, you can petition for an action to quiet title, possibly adverse possession, just the legal process to get that person out of your hair and off your back. So I mentioned an example. So let's look at an example together. And Stephanie, it's so funny that you gave that because it's very similar to the example that I have here for us. So a broker is contacted by a prospective client who wants to sell 5 acres of land. The client explains that while he has no deed to the property, both he and his father have been farming the land for over 25 years without any objection from the owner. While a potential adverse possession may exist, the client must first prove to a court that he and his father have met all the requirements to obtain title by adverse possession. The broker should only advise that the person consult an attorney and should not list the property until these issues have been resolved. Don't list a property if you don't know they're the owner. And if they say, well, I'm not technically the owner, but I've been doing what an owner does for the last 25 years, we should have a little flag that goes up, and that flag says what? Call the attorney. Let's get this resolved before we sell it. So because the owner has an objective, they could claim ocean. Was it open? Was it continuous? Was it exclusive? Was it notorious? Was it adverse? So that's what the judge is looking for there is ocean. Again, easement by prescription in unit 3. You've been using it long enough, the judge grants you an easement. They say, hey, you've had your fence here. You might as well just have an easement for the fence. Adverse possession is taking it a step further. Hey, your fence has been here for 20 years. I will just give you that portion of the land. So we talked about surveys. Why should the buyer have a new survey done? How do you know that that land hasn't changed? How do you know that those lines haven't been redrawn? Okay, good stuff, huh?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you talk about notorious hostile, can you go over that part again? I'm understanding that part without the permission of the owner.
The notorious?
Yes.
You're doing it, it's well known, and you do not have permission of the owner. So you can't hide a fence, can you?
No.
Not well. You can't hide a tractor trailer. If you move your trailer onto the property, you can't hide that. Others see the trailer, others see the fence, but what you don't have is permission of the owner. It's well known without permission of the owner. And that's what that notorious is.
Okay.
So like we said, the best way to stop somebody from claiming this is give them permission. So when the judge says, is it notorious? No, I had permission to be there. Okay, now we got other ways to resolve this, but at least it won't be adverse possession. There you go, Matt. Trespassing without consequences. All right, guys, that's all I got today. So when we come back on Thursday, we will do the math in unit 4. So if you want to look ahead at that, what we're going to talk about, not all the math in unit 4, so some of the math in unit 4. And then we're going to pick back up here where we talked about in unit 5, and we keep going. So that's all I have for today. You guys have a good afternoon. Have a good day tomorrow. If you haven't done your homework assignment yet, please remember to send me your selfie with your textbook. And I will see you guys at 9 o'clock on Thursday morning.